This is a kind of thrift shop of soccer, Major League Soccer, and they have had their stars come in there, but usually when they're has-beens. This is not the case with Messi, although I don't know, is Messi far from his prime at 35 years old?
People thought he was until the World Cup, and then they realized he's not.
But didn't they fix the World Cup? Wasn't the World Cup rigged so that Messi would win it?
He had a lot of PKs, yes.
Oh, come on. I mean, the guy would look at Messi cross-eyed. Penalty kick. All right, put him on the stripe. And it wasn't like he was booming these penalty kicks either. I mean, Messi's approach on the penalty kicks is great. He really does go by the old Brooklyn thing, right? Your mama.
I was going to say, it's like your dream.
And then dribbles one through the middle, not even like one side or the other. Look, I don't know much about the game in terms of what kind of skill it takes. The way he maneuvers through six guys, that the problem with the game is it usually ends up in a whole pile of shit. Nothing. He makes all these moves, and he's exhausted, and he's running, he's schwitzing, and, people are yelling and screaming. And then at the end of dribbling through six guys, the ball goes out of bounds, and the goalie picks it up and throws it to midfield. That's it.
The time. Wake up with Defo, joined by Lubie. Welcome to the Defo Show.
Very appropriate lead into the conversation today. Good morning, everybody. Great to be with you. A Tuesday edition of the Defo Show. Always wishing you guys a very pleasant good morning. Jeff DeForest and very alert and astute looking Mike Lubitz to take you through the day. Be with you till 9 o'clock. Special guest today, good friend of ours. He was on the broadcast team. You talk about a guy getting hosed by the Marlins. I hate it when this kind of stuff happens. Where, look, they're spending money on ball players. They're getting money from Major League Baseball shared revenue. It's not like Dan Snyder's in MLB, so there's a pretty good chance that most of the money that's supposed to be shared actually shows up, and they get to chop it up a little bit. Let's chop the pot. So if you're going to save money, do you fire your mascot? It's like firing the hitting coach if you're inside the organization trying to fix something. So Dave Van Horn, who had been doing the Marlin games on the radio forever, well, I guess he goes back with those guys, Sampson and Lauria, to Montreal. That constitutes forever. And then he came in with them and did all of their games, even when they were completely undesirable to listen to on the radio. They might have had less listeners than we did at the beginning of this thing, South Florida Live, right? Where are you at, Defo? Can I catch your show? Yeah, just Google the Defo Show. I can't find it. I appreciate anybody that comes up to me and says they would actually like to hear what we still have to say after our many years of just barfing out virtually anything that we could come up with to fill time on the radio across 42 years, I want to say, here in South Florida. That's a long stretch. To be making the same excuses for the same teams. Well, you know what? If the Dolphins could get an offensive line, I tell you what, there'd really be something this year. We'll get into that. But I wanted to think before we got started here today, and you know me, and I've been talking about this for a while now because we've had the luxury of having a lot of live sporting events. You had all of those European clay court tennis tournaments taking place leading into the French, and then you had all those European grass court tournaments taking place leading into Wimbledon, and then you had Wimbledon itself, and of course the French Open. Just great stuff happening. And then we just had the British Open, which they were teeing it up at like 1:30 in the morning, although I don't get Peacock.
Yeah.
Peacocks don't make a sound like that. Is that my vulture sound?
Yes. Peacock does.
What does a peacock do, man? Do they make any noise?
They make noises.
I mean,
that.
They gobble? What do they do? They sound like a turkey? I'm not sure. Anyway, I don't get it, so I wasn't able to turn on the early portions because, I'm waking up intermittently throughout the evening. Do you find yourself through the nighttime, Lubie? Did you wake up at
I wake up
last night, I woke up at 12:30 after falling asleep at 11:30 and said, fuck, it's morning already. I don't know. Do you find yourself doing that?
Yes, I wake up quite often, especially now with a cat and a dog. Yes, I don't get full.
Is that a byproduct of so-called morning drive media work?
I don't think it's radio stuff for me anymore. I used to have weird radio lingerings. My radio lingerings went out the way a long time ago.
Yeah.
Moved on.
Where you're waking up and you're dreaming that the program director called you and told you not to come into work today, and then it turns out it wasn't a dream.
Yeah, exactly.
Did we ever have to throw? Look, I don't mean to be disparaging to anybody, but immediately after meeting with most management people, didn't you feel a little bit slimy, Lubie?
Oh, yeah.
Especially, I don't want to name names, but that Todd Winnick guy, unbelievable. I always felt a little slimy after leaving that guy's office.
100%.
Like I had been slimed.
Yes, 100%.
that there were plots going. I mean, I almost became like a Trump conspiracy theorist where, you know what? They're all against me, every single one of these guys. But I wanted to start out by thanking your Miami Heat and the Florida Panthers and the first half Miami Marlins so far. We don't know the second half. I mean, the jury is not only out, but it seems like the deliberations are not exceedingly favorable.
Nope.
They've come back and asked to see the murder weapon again, and they also wanted to see the copy of the fingerprint that was on it. And it's yours. I mean, you're caught red-handed. Woman? What woman? I don't see any woman here.
Exactly.
But anyway, and we'll see what happens. They play the Tampa Bay Rays tonight, and that's the beginning, I would imagine, of what, a 3-game series, 2 games, 3 games, something like that, probably 3. And in Tampa, I thought they were coming home for an extended road trip. I mean, a homestand.
It's a 2-game set, and then I think after that they're home for a while.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's not necessarily a favorable, geographical landing place for the Marlins either. In the throes of finally snapping an 8-game losing streak coming out of the All-Star break, where you're starting to wonder, are they ever going to win again? I don't know.
They almost didn't.
I don't mind it. I mean, and they're still in the wild card spot. They're in.
Yes.
They're like 3 wild card teams. So they still are right in there, all right? And a bunch of teams competing. The wild card race, as I said to the great Jim Sarney on his social media post, alluding to the standings in the wild card chase, where the Marlins still have a spot. But many teams hovering around, too. What is it, like 5 teams competing for the 3 spots that are right there? And somebody could emerge from the pack still and get into the race. But they're still clinging to something. So that's good. But I want to thank them personally because otherwise we would have been in trouble. And, people are always wondering, when did they pull the trigger on nonstop football talk here? Is it too early to analyze, the results of the Hurricanes spring game and try to make some kind of correlation application to what they're going to do during the regular season? Their odds are flashing with enormity in your face, Lubie. They're like 40-1, or it might even be 50-1. Is it improbable that they make the Final Four and make it into the Bowl Championship Series or whatever that is, the conference, what do they call it? College Football Championship.
Playoffs. It's just college football playoff, yeah.
Do they make the playoffs at 40-1, Lubie?
Who are we talking about?
The Canes.
Oh, my God. Are you kidding me?
No chance? All right.
No. What? No. Win 8 games. That would be.
They have like 40 new guys on the roster. I
just,
believe 40 new guys. Mario Cristobal has done a Deion Sanders just shipped out everybody that he could and brought in new blood. So what do you think? 40-1? Would you take it? Probably not, right?
No.
All
Win 8. Now, yeah, I have different expectations for the Canes. Win 8 games.
All right, so maybe a little too soon to start dabbling in a detailed college football conversation. Maybe some people would be advocates of the idea that it's never too soon, that you could do this year round. And NFL. I mean, the training camp. We had Chris Perkins on yesterday. It got me a little excited about what was going on, and yet later on in the program, I guess we could examine the reasons why I'm not buying into the Miami Dolphins this year.
Okay.
And that's fueled by the exasperation that we've experienced over the last post-Danny era. What is it? 24 years now. 1999. We haven't had that feeling here since 1999.
Yep.
And I'm still not sure what to make of it, but for every reason that you could give me, and there are many that you could give me that would paint a very glowing and optimistic picture of what was going to happen with the Miami Dolphins this season, I keep looking at that one glaring mistake that they made, which is leaving the offensive line untouched.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a huge issue.
I don't know how you could do that, right? You have a giant zit on your nose. Are you going to squeeze it? Or just let it heal up and cancel your next 6 weeks worth of dates? What do you think?
I mean, they didn't need Jalen Ramsey. They needed a right tackle and a left guard. I mean, their issue was their safeties, and Brandon Jones is coming back, and that's huge for them. Brandon Jones with Holland, with Howard, with whoever else, they'd have a strong secondary. I mean, they didn't need Jalen Ramsey. They needed you wanted to trade for a star player to get a right tackle that's younger, so that if Armstead misses, you still have 3 dudes. Right now they have 4. They have 3 of the 5 with Armstead, but Armstead's going to miss 5 games. Yes, that was a weird. Greer has a weird thing about trying to do the flashy move and not the smart move.
You don't want to hear words like patchwork
Yeah,
and makeshift
I mean,
every time somebody references your offensive line. And then you have the suspect nature of Tua at quarterback. As flashy as he looked at times, as efficient as he looked at times, as good as he looked at times, there's still this vulnerability there with this cat where you don't know, can he sustain it? And, beyond the injuries, can he sustain it across 16 games? Is he capable of doing it? I don't know. I want to root for the kid, but at the same time, not sure. And if he's getting pummeled and being run down like, Ben Gazzara and run for your life, I don't want my quarterback looking like he's, being chased by the one-armed man in The Fugitive, right? Hey, Kimball, you did it. That kind of thing. So we'll see what happens. I don't want to douse the flames of optimism here in South Florida about this team, but Chris Perkins is a very astute observer, right? I mean, this is his job. And he says 10 wins. Is 10 wins really that monumental?
No, that's a bad
In
year.
a 17-game season, that they would be improving by one victory.
It's a bad year. Chris is
over the last 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, Chris is agreeing with you, and I disagree. I think they're going to be really good. But yeah.
Are they not all in this year also? I mean, all of that draft capital, we always got the rhetoric. We get the same rhetoric, Lubie. I don't mean to cut you off, but we get the same rhetoric all the time about, okay, we're going to strip it down. We're going to build it up through the draft. And then I think it was good that they went all in, but did they go all in and accomplish nothing more than a swing and a miss or maybe a foul ball back that keeps the at-bat alive but doesn't necessarily get you on base? What do you think?
I mean, they have tons of talent, and I think they have the right coach on D. That was a big issue too. Is Boyer sucked? Boyer was never the defensive mind. It was always Flores, and when Flores was fired, to keep Boyer was fucking stupid.
So they may as well have had Cleat Boyer, is what you're saying.
Yes, to go and get Fangio, I think is smart. He's a guy that knows how to take advantage of Chubb's abilities with Phillips. Wilkins, he doesn't have the deal he wants, but he's going to be out there. An improved linebacking core, bringing in the guy Long from Titans. You bring in Ramsey, so Ramsey and Howard should feed off of each other. You have Holland, who's become one of the better safeties in the game, and then you get Jones back. Defensively, they should be a stalwart. And then on top of that, offensively, they have as much talent. I mean, if you look at the skill position, they're as fast as you can get. And with the kind of offense McDaniel likes to run, the speed it kills. So that's great. They have the talent. The problem is offensive line, and they didn't address it. And I don't know if that means they can only win 12 games or they can only win 8. I think they'll win 12 to 13. I think
wow, you have them going big. Wow.
I think the Jets are going to struggle. I think the Patriots are going to be fucking horrible. And I think the Bills are going to take a step back. So I think their division's not as good as everyone wants it to be. I think it's
spoken like a true Republican. I mean, what about Hillary's emails? You're thinking everybody goes backwards.
I think the AFC East is going to be what remember the AFC West was going to be the scary division, and then the season happened. The Raiders were and the Broncos were and I think that's what the AFC East is going to be this year. Like they're looking at the flash of the Jets, and they're actually overrating their defense. Their defense had like 3 dudes. It's not like the defense was elite. It's Quentin Williams was good up front, and Gardner was good in the back, but they were young, so people gave went after them. They're not going to go after Gardner.
Well, I mean, the thing with the Jets is, and this is pretty simple. They had horrible quarterback play. It's one thing to have quarterback play you can cover up for by having, great components. The rest of your team is just outstanding. And, you're able to win with defense or the running game. They just had horrible quarterback play. And that's, you would have to think, at the very least, erased. I mean, even Aaron Rodgers is a shell of himself. He's still light years ahead of Zach Wilson. So, you would have to think that alone. I mean, if that's the critical position in all of sport. Obviously, we know there have been examples where you could get by without a great quarterback, but it sure helps to have one as opposed to having somebody that's detrimental to your team from that position.
Look, he was horrendous. I mean, Wilson or Mike White, it's an upgrade over them. The thing is, their offensive line is not better. Like, their offensive line is an issue, too, and they didn't address their offensive line at all either. Like, it's very similar to what the Dolphins did, but with way less talent. Like, that's the thing. The Dolphins have so much talent where I think they can mask it a little bit until the playoffs. I think in the regular season, the Dolphins have enough talent where they can do what the Vikings did, and they can win 12 or 13 games, and they can get to a playoffs. Then I don't know, because when they face the Chiefs or they face the Bengals, those teams address their offensive lines. Those teams have gotten really strong up front, and that's where you win in the playoffs. That's the thing with the Bills to me. The Bills offensive line is sort of look, Josh Allen gets attacked a lot, and he hasn't learned to just eat the ball. He turns it over a lot. He led the league in turnovers last year because when he gets pressured, he does a Tom Brady and he just flings it, even though he's a big, strong dude. I think the Dolphins will win a lot in the regular season.
By the way, speaking of Brady, I mean, did you see he's connected with Bradley Cooper's old flame there, Elena Shack?
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know that. Yeah, good for him.
The paparazzi's brilliant, man. I mean, I have pictures of him making out in the back of the car. I mean, all kinds of stuff. She's showing up naked at his house. Fantastic. I mean, not that Tom was going to suffer in the chick category. You would think he's right up there with my man Matteo Berrettini of tennis fame, where you look at the guy and you're thinking, this guy doesn't have any problem getting. You fill in the blank there. All right, Louis, I don't want to use the word, but
getting tail.
Often is a preface for the word cat. All right, I didn't even get to the stuff. I mean, I didn't want to go too deeply into this dolphin thing because and brilliant analysis there. You're like Greg Cosell here on the show, Louis. You're citing sabermetrics and all kinds of different things and giving me a lot of valid reasons why. Look, I don't mean to not be optimistic about it. I'd love it if I was wrong about this. It's just it seems to me, and the theme of this show could be, it's the same old song.
Yep.
It's just a different year under Chris Greer. And we've been singing the same old song with our teams. That's what we do here in South Florida. You people around the country that are unfamiliar with the whining and the fetching that's gone on for centuries here, some of it very justified and valid, right? Panthers were always going to get the proper mix of the good young stars that they had accumulated with their excellent draft acumen, and they were going to mix them with the right collection of veterans, and they were going to bring out the most in these kids, and then you're going to get some solid goaltending, and bingo, Stanley Cup after Stanley Cup, right? We wouldn't know what to do with the Stanley Cup, having possessed it for 3 straight years. The Miami Heat, they're in a different category because they've been the one team that consistently has found ways to pull out opportunities to win, and even in improbable circumstances, have been in a position to win championships like last year. Unbelievable! How are they there? You got to be kidding me. So a Schlepper team with Max Strus and a bunch of guys that you wouldn't recognize as NBA players if you ran into them. I mean, it's like the people in Publix here in South Florida don't know they're bumping into fucking Messi. That's Messi.
People were saying that was staged.
Fanfare. They have an unveiling for the guy. They don't even just introduce him. Ladies and gentlemen, now in the lineup, number 10, Lionel Messi.
Like he's artwork.
Gotta go with the derisive Mexican whistle there. Foul call on the fans. I mean, but how do you bump into him in the grocery store? You don't know. Did they make him wait? Like, did he take a number and he was like number 76?
That'd be great if he was just sitting there waiting for some boar's head.
And they're only on like 67?
And you see Messi bitching like, what?
And they got the 90-year-old guy with the hairnet on that looks like Brooks from Shawshank Redemption, and he's the guy that's carving your fucking meat.
That would be
you
great.
Gotta be kidding me.
If he complains on Let's Eat.
What's up with the deli counter and Sea Ranch Lakes?
That made me so happy if Messi's like,
isn't Sea Ranch Lakes around the corner from me? That's Lauderdale by the Sea, that Publix, but it's right just south of a community called Sea Ranch Lakes.
I think
is that where you were shopping? This guy was in my neighborhood. This cat? What are you kidding me?
He lives in the Sunny Isles area, but I think he was around like the stadium area. I think that was the whole point, was that like he was.
That's why he would go unrecognized. So if he was in that Publix, because people don't even know who they are in the Publix that I go to. It's out to Conquer City, man. Those condos across the street. Wow. When more people are on the motorized carts than are actually walking in a store, you probably live in a senior neighborhood.
Oh my God.
I haven't even gotten on my, main piece of agenda here, or whatever piece of the agenda.
Yeah.
Which is, we wanted to thank these teams, though, for doing the improbable. The Panthers and the Heat. And, of course, prior to that, I don't want to ignore it because it was monumental, and yet it's somewhat forgotten already. The FAU University of Miami run to the college basketball Final Four. That was as unfathomable as both of those teams, Heat and Panthers, catching fire and making it to the final round of the postseason. No disgrace in losing because it kept us into June. Yes. It kept us away from all of this stuff about, you think the Dolphins can go all the way? Not that idle speculation about that isn't important in, conversational sports talk. Right? You have to throw some of that stuff in there, and there's wild anticipation. I would imagine. I mean, How easy does Roger Goodell have it? Is that the greatest job in all of sports? If the teaser horse on a stud farm is the worst job in all of sports, Roger Goodell's NFL commissionership has to be by far the greatest job. You don't have to do anything.
Nothing.
Nothing. They come running to your feet. Oh, Roger, can we give you barrels of money here? Never mind the Saudis. We'll outbid them. We just want to have like a logo patch on the Washington Commanders uniform. That's all we want. Here's $100 million, whatever you want. What do you say, Roger?
Well, and even in this world where like cable and platforms are changing, streamers are like, okay, we'll throw you money now. Like, everyone's like, here, we need NFL. Come on, put it on every day of the week. Like, here's
exactly, yeah. Games, from the 1930s are being shown here. Here's the Chicago Bears. I tell you what, they can really run the football. Here's what was the guy? I used to. He was with the San Francisco 49ers. He had like some weirdo name, and I'm blanking on it now. And he was one of the fabled running backs of the long gone era. Crazy Legs Hirsch. That was the guy, right? Wasn't he with the 49ers? Crazy Legs Hirsch. I always thought, of Sonny Hirsch whenever I, conjured up the images of Crazy Legs Hirsch. I think when I just started watching football, he must have been around in the 50s. And there wasn't a whole lot, to be had. Now, like you said, it's on every night. It's on 24 hours. They have their own network like every other sport. All right, but here's the thing. All of those teams did us a favor, Lubie. They did us a big favor because in the background, and I don't know if I'm subject to any copyright infringement. Those are words that we're not really comfortable with, right? Like Denzel Washington, an American gangster. Copyright infringement. That's what he was talking about when he was talking to Cuba Gooding, who was probably goosing that actress, legitimately so, right? Was that even part of the script, or was he ad-libbing that and everybody thought it was brilliant acting? Cuba Gooding Jr., right? Because didn't he have a penchant for grabbing women?
Oh, I don't know. Oh, God, I don't know. I'm not going to.
He's on trial like more often than Kevin Spacey. I don't know who spends more time in court, Kevin Spacey or Donald Trump. What do you think?
Oh, that's a good one.
Once the Trump trials start to unfold.
I would lean Trump.
Which I guess is going to be in March. From March until he'll always be campaigning from the courthouse steps. Which
that's what's funny. People were like, oh, my God, how are they putting it off? I'm like, what do you mean that's worse for him? Like right now really is an election season. The election's not till the end of 2024. Like we shouldn't even give a shit about the election until the beginning, I would say the middle of next year.
If he beats one of these raps, which is unlikely, but if he does.
But I just think that like them setting the trial at the beginning of next year, how does he run for president? Like that's right in the middle of the election.
Because we're in a new world, Lubie. I mean, imagine that. A guy that already has 3 and is scheduled to probably be hit with 2 more indictments.
Yeah, 5. He's supposed to have 5.
Yeah. Is our leading presidential candidate, and sad to say this, Louis, but is in there with a shot to win it. No?
There's
only can't be discounted. I mean, in 2016, I would have given a guy no chance, 0. The only guy that was into it was Wayne Allen Root, the handicapper.
Yeah.
Who, would gladly sell you his picks, but he was right on this one. He was sending it in on Trump at like 40-1. And then, substantial amounts of cash, man. This guy, no wonder he's a staunch Trump supporter. When I spoke to him that one time about possibly doing some advertising and programming with us, he couldn't help himself, man. He kept throwing in the Trumpster, and I kept biting my lip going, I need this guy's money. Yeah, Donnie's doing some good things. It's like that slavery argument, right? Well, there's some good that came from that. Huh? I saw a black guy on TV defending that.
No, I haven't seen anyone of any minority to defend. I haven't even seen white people. I've actually seen no one defend that.
Defending it.
I've seen Republicans.
Like, where'd they find this guy? How much money did they give this guy to sell his soul? I mean, it's got to be Saudi money there, right? I thought in the background I heard Phil Mickelson coaching him. Go ahead, say it. It was good for them.
Greg Norman. Like, is that Aussie?
Greg Norman, yeah. I mean, could you find like a guy that looks almost like an albino, and he's the guy that's advocating that slavery had its benefits?
Oh, Jesus.
God. My God. All right. Anyway. We've been dodging the issue here, which is, all of this good that happened in South Florida. And, I don't know, did I start the show on kind of a negative? It's not, I don't want to be pessimistic about the Dolphins. I'm not. I would love it if they just lit it up. I mean, when they were lighting it up early in the season, what were they like? Were they 8-1 at some point?
They got to 8-3. I think they remember struggled early. They were 8-3. They had gone on like a 5-game win streak.
They were great.
They were like the number 1 team in football or something. They were getting like power.
It was exciting. I mean, you felt like what we've been talking about for years here on these shows, Lubie. The entire time I've known you, what have we always said? If you're going to lose, at least be exciting.
Yes.
If you're not going to win a championship, at least be exciting in your pursuit of that title.
Yes.
Only one team comes out on top at the end of the year. 31 teams walk away disappointed. But don't be a bitter disappointment. At least be exciting. And they were that. They were every bit of that, right?
Yep.
You couldn't wait to see what was going to happen with Tyreek Hill and Waddle running the football like monsters. I didn't realize their averages were so high that Raheem Mostert averaged almost 5 yards a carry. Holy
Yes.
Mercury Morris.
That's why I was yelling at my TV half the time in that losing streak.
You'd have been doing that anyway. What are you talking about?
No, because they were playing well, and they were like 3 games in a row where they were either had leads or were close, and they had like backups in at quarterback, and he would keep throwing it. I'm like, it's fucking Skylar Thompson, Mike McDaniel. Why do you trust Skylar Thompson? Run the fucking foot. And they were running it for huge chunks, and it was like, what is he doing? Like, what is going on? It was very confusing what he was doing in that middle to late third part of the season. Like, I didn't understand what he was doing. Yes, they ran.
I think, you would think this guy is cerebral, right? I mean, that's the book on Mike McDaniel. Now, is he cerebral enough to go back and look and say, you know what? I probably could have approached this a little bit differently.
I hope.
Because, I mean, he was a first-year head coach. There was, I mean, you're implying there was not necessarily turmoil, but by continuing to use people from the Flores regime, there might have been conflict in approach with Boyer, the defensive coordinator.
Yeah, Ross. Ross pulled Jimmy Johnson. Like, that was
Said you're going to keep these assistants because I don't want to fire them all.
100%. That's literally what happened.
That's a big mistake usually. Although McDaniel, was, I mean, he was hired kind of late in the process, was he not? And wasn't in a position as, never having been a head coach before to, just snap his fingers and have the usual suspects line up and become his assistant coaches. Now, Jimmy took his whole staff with him from college to the pros. And then eventually a lot of those guys got head coaching jobs. This is great because we dove right back into the football talk. That's how easy it is to fall into this sports talk trap where no sport is worthy of talking about. Although I don't think people are going to find what I have to say particularly flattering because I've been getting a lot of flack from people about my position on the game of soccer, a.k.a. football, in relation to the Women's World Cup, which everybody seems... See, this is one of the biggest hoaxes ever perpetuated on the American public, Lubie, because nobody really gives a flying one about this game. Nobody cares. And the defenders, the people that are saying that I'm a crackpot for saying, look, I've played every sport. There's no game I haven't, tried my hand at some point in time. I love it. I don't care. I mean, I'm always into it. We're bouncing a beach ball in the swimming pool, and everybody's getting competitive about it and, trying to keep the ball alive for as long as they can. And I'm thinking, how sick is this? Who cares if the ball goes, into the neighbor's yard? That would be good because it would end the game. I wouldn't have to worry about getting hit in the head with a stupid beach ball, right? So, but I tried everything. And soccer is the one game that I thought was as futile to play as anything I've ever attempted. Excuse me here. Stupid, right? You run. Nothing happens. Goal is huge. Nobody can score. And it's crazy. And this would be the spot for my tyrannical condemnation of the game. Once again, because I realized I woke up at like 12:30. Dog woke me up, and I couldn't get back to sleep. And I thought, isn't that women's soccer stuff on Fox Sports 1 right now?
That'll put me to sleep.
I mean, I could have watched some old Jerry Quarry fights, but no. I popped this on, figuring put me out like a baby.
Oh, no.
So I'm watching this stuff, and I realize that this is like the most futile, dumb, concept of a game that anyone's ever come up with. You're screaming, pick it up and throw it already, for Christ's sake. Just throw the ball.
I don't mind.
Now, even if you're, going to tell me, well, listen, Defo, I mean, that's ridiculous, right? Why don't you hit a golf ball with a fungo bat there? That'll get it out of the sand trap, possibly. But nonetheless, you can't do it. It's not part of the rules. So who invented this game? Who would come up with a game this stupid? I mean, that's where I'm at with it. And the people that are arguing with me and saying, well, you don't understand, Defo. I know this for a fact. You people don't really like this game. You don't. You are kidding yourselves.
I know a lot of people who love it.
They don't like it. They don't. I am right, and the rest of the world is wrong. I believe this.
You sound like
Sometimes you have to stand up for yourself.
you sound like Trump. I'm the only one.
I'm not Trump, but the people I see, it's exactly the opposite, Libby. The Trumpsters are the people that just lie to themselves and argue that they think there's something inherently great about this game. It's not. There's nothing there. You hit the ball off your fucking head. Off your head. That's a good play.
Oh
A
yes.
bicycle kick. You flip over backwards like some acrobat, like you were Jorge Paez, the boxer, being shot out of a cannon when he was living with his circus family growing up as a kid. Crazy shit, right? What are you? I mean, one of the Walendas? I mean, who needs this? I don't need circus stuff. But, and while that could be great, look, we all know this, that if all you saw were the highlights of goals being scored, soccer might be a decent game. No? What do you think? You'd say, all right, I can accept the fact that nobody uses their hands or legs. I mean, their hands or arms. And, even though the strategy looks absolutely weak, I can't wait for Spain and Zambia later on today because I think that's going to be a bloodbath. Spain and Zambia, women's soccer is going to occupy time on TV across the world. And people are going to be tuned in because what? Because they refuse to admit that they're wrong. I'm serious. You know what?
I think you're serious.
These are the same people that say that we don't need to do anything about gun control. It's the same kind of argument, right? When people try to defend soccer to a guy like me, and they say, well, you're missing the point there, Defo. Now this is, I think we need to have a little parenthetical. I have the utmost respect for all of our friends that actually played the game at a high level. That's great, right? I don't mean to demean that. I've done nothing like that in terms of athletic accomplishment, playing professionally like a Ray Hudson or a Thomas Rongen or any of these people, right? I can't tell them that they're crazy for playing the sport. They grew up with it. Maybe an unfortunate, mistake that happened at birth. But how do you defend this? I mean, is it not like defending limiting abortion rights?
No,
It's right there.
that's
Because it's a nonsensical argument. Because if you just admitted it to yourself, you would say, I think this sport sucks. I don't get it. You're on the verge of admitting it, Lubie. And I think this would be a bold, step forward for you.
I
Because
like
you could just say, hey, it sucks.
I like I like aspects of soccer. I don't like schmank soccer. Like you're never gonna watch me. You're never gonna catch me watching the MLS outside of Messi being there because Messi doesn't play MLS soccer.
But now he's there.
Messi plays soccer at the highest of levels, and it's interesting to watch him. You can just see the dichotomy between the way he plays and the way everyone else plays. So I don't mind watching him. I don't like watching. It's like watching minor league baseball. It's just you can see the difference in the sport. I have no interest in watching MLS soccer, but I will watch the World Cup and I'll watch every match of the World Cup because the level of play is strong. The only thing
They had one good game in the World Cup last year, the final. No, it had a level of excitement to it. It really did.
There's a lot of games like that. My problem is, look, it's funny. Soccer. The one issue I have with soccer fans is they don't want the sport to change at all. They like keeping the sport the same, and I think that's a joke. We as Americans, maybe that's an American thing, but every sport we have, we've tinkered with tremendously. Every sport is nothing. If you watch basketball, baseball, football, maybe hockey, but basketball, baseball, football now compared to 20 years ago, you would not recognize the sport. They're all three sports are nothing like they were in the 2000s, let alone the 90s and the 80s. Soccer right now looks like soccer in the fucking 70s.
It's Cro-Magnon man. Exactly the same.
That's dumb. Like the offside rule is one of the stupidest fucking rules in all of sports. It's hockey too. Hockey, I don't know. Look, well, they have an advantage. Okay, that's the point of sports is to gain an advantage and have the other team try and stop you. Like, especially offensively, it's the only two sports where they like, no, we don't want more offense. It's like, what? Football, baseball, basketball did everything they could to have more offense. Soccer and hockey are like, no, offense. Why would we want more offense? So that's my only gripe about soccer. But I don't think the sport as a whole sucks.
You don't equate it with restricting abortion rights. All right, no, but the arguments are just as unfounded in terms of having any credibility with me. Right? I mean, let a woman do what she wants to do with her body. It's her choice. And what is the government getting involved in that for? because of a bunch of religious zealots. The one has nothing to do with the other, and they're supposed to be definitively separated, right? Separation of church, Lubie, and state. And I think you have to separate your own personal desire to be deemed insane by not defending it. If you like it and you like to watch it, okay, but just don't lay it on me, right? It's kind of like the people with Awake magazine, the Jehovah's Witnesses. They pound on your door first thing in the morning. Are you awake, sir? It's like, I am now, you fucking asshole in the straw hat. What are you doing out there in a shirt and tie? It's 150 degrees. And what is this schmata wreck of a rag of a newspaper that you're peddling? Here, I'll take one. Now get the fuck out of here.
They're always hot as hell, and they're always in like full garb. It's like, aren't you hot?
White shirt and a tie, right? I mean, why is it necessary to wear a tie to deliver the word of God? I don't know.
Has anyone signed up?
Who welcomes these people? Oh, geez, 7:30 on a Sunday morning. Why don't you come on in and have a cup of coffee? I was just getting up to, brew some fresh. It's crazy. All right, all that being said, and, as the great Gordon Soley would say, there you have it. You people are kidding yourselves. And, it'd be okay to just admit it. Look, the game sucks. You may enjoy, watching it because of the futility factor, which is what I enjoy about it. I mean, right now, looks like, Germany's playing Morocco. All right, does Morocco have any shot? You would think, they're used to walking around in those pointy shoes like the Iron Sheik. So you would think, and it's hard to imagine. Can you imagine a young Deef wearing a fez and a little Moroccan outfit? Serving the biggest stars and celebrities in Los Angeles at the Dominic Webb restaurant.
Actually did it.
Yeah, to wear a fez, yeah, and a little red outfit with the gold buttons and the pantaloons, whatever those are, right? Where it's like, are these baseball pants that went wrong somehow? like you were the clown prince of baseball, and then we had the little yellow pointy shoes, which I think were made very popular and became in vogue when the Iron Sheik started wrestling professionally. But yeah, I mean, maybe they have an advantage because they can walk around in that stuff. I'm not sure, Morocco, but they're getting shellacked right now by the almighty German team. Which German women, are they like right up there with the German men? What do you think?
No, not in soccer. German men are like top 3 to 4.
They're good, yeah.
German
men.
That good. The women,
Eckert Krautzen wouldn't have it any other way. Is he coaching the Germans? Eckert?
I don't.
He was probably Austrian. I don't even know. Who the fuck knows? But I do want to say this on behalf of soccer, and here's the beauty of it. And I remember one day I was at the track or at a simulcasting facility nearby here, Harris Casino, formerly known as the Isle, and Big Al had his nephew, his sick, degenerate, self-sabotaging nephew, who was in the hole, I don't know, like $200,000 or something, or some bookie, right? So what does he do? He makes a 20-team, Lubie, 20-team European soccer parlay, all unders. And guess what? He hits it.
You can. How is that even possible? 20 teams? I don't even know how you can hit 20.
20 teams, all unders. All unders. This is all he ever does. He parlays the under in like all games on the slate. And he hit it. And there was some phenomenal amount of money, like, $300,000-400,000 that he made for putting up next to nothing. And, that was it. He got out. Unbelievable. Now, I don't know if he was going to be able to collect that because you would imagine anybody that's taking these sucker bets might not be
I was going to say, can
the
they
most reputable in terms of payoffs.
Like, can they
especially when you win $600,000, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No, Jose's not here.
Exactly.
You think you're calling a bookmaker in Costa Rica, and it's actually a guy in Hialeah who's also selling suits. Yeah, no, that looks great on you. I'd take 2 if I were you. And another $100, you get a third one. Unbelievable. No, the labels. Don't worry about the labels. We still have those.
He also has a flower shop. I have some nice orchids.
Through 15 games of the Women's World Cup, this information courtesy of our good friend and our, you would have to say, somewhat of the editor of the show, is he not? Jim Sarney. I mean, even if he puts stuff out there that you deem to be utterly ridiculous, still, there's some relevance to some of it. And in this case, he's absolutely spot on. Jim Sarney, congratulations. You have found 15 reasons to love the Women's World Cup in soccer. 15 reasons. And this is why. Through 15 games, Lubie, unders 12-2-1. A gift from the gods of gambling. A game that you think has no merit whatsoever, and they're giving money away on the unders in the Women's World Cup. Now, the theory is that these weenie teams are only in there playing the stall, which is why the action is so lacking in being, in any way compelling. As these teams like Morocco, they're just in there to stifle whatever they can. Now, Germany's running away and hiding in this game, and I don't believe this is not a live game that's on right now. This was already contested. But was this already,
I don't know.
a definitive blowout?
They are 12 hours ahead. I mean, so this is when live games.
I think the live action just ended up, and the games that are on the slate today do not include Germany and Morocco.
Okay.
But you can make a fortune betting these games. In fact, today, this is for Wednesday. Now, is it Wednesday in Australia right now? How are they labeling this? Does the United States play today against the Netherlands? So what I know.
I don't know.
No, that's tomorrow.
I have no idea.
What about this Spain-Zambia match?
I didn't know we were going to be doing.
Spain is minus 10,000. That is it 10,000 or 100,000?
Wednesday.
I think minus 100,000, and I mean, who's taking that? You get 125 to 1 with Zambia.
Yeah, that's stupid. The Wednesday games are tonight. Like,
oh yeah, okay. So that would be like early this morning.
Yeah, like tonight is their more like they're 12 hours ahead. So right now it's nighttime there. So tonight is when we'll have games. Like it's 9 at night, 1 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning, and then 8 in the morning.
Let me ask you this: what day is it in Japan? Do you know? Today, because there's an actual big fight going on, and it's going to be supposedly, they're going to step into the ring about 8 o'clock this morning in Japan. You wouldn't be familiar with these guys, but they're both very good. A guy named Stephen Fulton.
So they're 13 hours ahead. It's tonight. It's 8:42 at night in Japan.
Okay, so it's 8:42 at night in Japan?
Yes. Like Australia.
Why would these guys be fighting? Is it some holiday in Japan? Why would they be fighting on a Tuesday night?
I don't know. You tell me.
There's a big fight. Steve Fulton and Naomi Inui, who is like the Japanese assassin. This guy is like a monster. He's a heavy favorite over Stephen Fulton of the USA. This is for the WBC and WBO Super Bantamweight Championship, 122 pounds. Both these guys can really fight, though. They're both very good. People are saying take a shot with Stephen Fulton. I don't know about that. I've seen a Japanese kid fight a couple of times, and tough as nails, right? Because those little guys, they can do it all. I mean, if they have power, they can really do it all because they're fast as lightning. Yeah. And those, what was that? Everybody was kung fu fighting. Those Japanese were fast as lightning, my friend. Fast as lightning. All right, so that's just one thing. 15 reasons to love the Women's World Cup in soccer. Unders 12-2-1.
Nice.
Both teams scoring. You can bet on this proposition that both teams will score. Yes or no. What would you think would be the order of business there? I mean, you were getting just absolutely, rich off of one of these propositions. Yes or no. Both teams scoring in a game.
There's usually some teams that are just a joke. The joke teams actually get one goal.
Kind of like Vietnam, right?
I would say no. Yeah, they didn't even do anything. There's a ton of teams that don't even really belong there.
Through 15 games, the no proposition on that is 14-1. Where can you get this?
No, nowhere. Yeah, that's
this mashugana game that nobody in their right mind should play. Nobody should embrace. They should suspend operations of virtually all soccer leagues around the world. No,
I don't despise it like you do. I
don't despise it. I don't get it. I don't get the fascination with it. I really don't.
I mean, you made that clear. I'm aware that you don't get it.
What's appealing about it? I don't know. Give me one thing, Lubie. I mean, what's good about it? Besides, if you saw like a highlight reel of the best goals ever scored, you probably look and go, wow, that's some game.
That's what I like.
I'll admit to that.
Seeing the highest level play.
But you're getting one of those every hour and a half.
That's the problem, and that's why I don't watch it outside of every 4 years, because you only, out of a match, you get like 4 or 5, maybe 8 really good moments. The rest of it is the ball just bouncing back and forth. So I can only do it once every 4 years. After that, it gets really old because the game is not only boring, there's ways to that's what frustrates me, is that there's ways
do you think we need stricter gun control in America? Where do you stand on that?
Well, you know what I said.
Okay. All right. Well, that's why it doesn't make sense that you're issuing this defense. Although See, you're sort of there, but you won't admit it. And you're like a lot of people in our viewing audience that are hammering me about my opinion on soccer. That, and it's fine. I mean, look, that's my opinion. I've watched it. I've tried. I've done everything I can to try and embrace the game. I've told you this story a million times about Sam Lefrak telling me to become a soccer announcer in 1970 something, early 70s. And I thought, well, what if I had taken him up on that advice? I don't know. I wouldn't have been any good at it because I don't get the game. Even if I had forced myself to. I had a guy ask me a long time ago. I sort of regret turning this down because I used to never turn down any job opportunity. Somebody asked me if I wanted to do this. They said, hey, you want to call a dog race there on TV? Sure, be happy to do that. Whatever it was. And a guy who was sort of influential in the early days of mixed martial arts when it was in its infant stages asked me to go ahead and do a play-by-play on a mixed martial arts event that was taking place in West Palm Beach and on TV. And so I said, you know what? I just don't feel comfortable because I don't know the terminology of the sport. It wasn't as prevalent there where now, I mean, you realize there is no terminology to the sport.
No, I was going to say, you can just do a boxing
There's
match.
nothing. Yeah.
I mean,
nothing happens. Two guys against a cage. They're holding each other. One guy's praying that the other guy doesn't get his arm around his Adam's apple because if he does, the match is over. And that's the way most of these matches end, in the rear naked choke. You did have Ronda Rousey briefly with the arm bar. How come nobody else uses the arm bar, Lubie, as a submission hold?
I mean, as you saw with Ronda Rousey, eventually stopped working.
Why not the fucking Boston Crab while you're at it? Just there it is, a submission hold, the Boston Crab, which was probably the most wicked and effective submission hold in the history of any form. I mean, could pro wrestling be considered a factor or a component of mixed martial arts? Pro wrestling.
It feels like. What do you mean? I feel like it is. They're the same thing.
Is it any different?
To
the
me,
karate chop to the Adam's apple? It may not be scripted, but I wouldn't put it past Dana White. I don't mean to cast aspersions his way, but is he the most, if you're unscrupulous, if you're doing things that are, are reeking of fraud, are you scrupulous if you're doing things the right way, Lubie? So with Dana White, I mean, you would have to think that there would be the possibility that just from knowing the guy and seeing his personality, that whole phony thing at the press conferences.
Oh, yeah, please.
What? I mean, come on, Dana. How many times can you do the same move? Like you're going to get between these two monsters and, stop them from going after each other by going like this. It's great. All right, so Sarni has enlightened me, and he's right about this. 14-1. All you have to do is bet that both teams won't score. A fucking cinch.
I don't know what that says about
14-1. Your $100, I mean, has netted you $1,300 at this point. $100 every time you throw it down. I mean, it's like they're giving you money, just handing it to you. Imagine you go to the sports book every day. You're going checking in there at Harris in Atlantic City, going, "Hey, you got my 100?" First thing you do in the morning before you even have breakfast is go down and cash your ticket. It's a beautiful thing. 14-1. And this is the thing. It's already too late to capitalize on this.
Yeah,
because this was mostly first round when there was.
Eventually, you'll get teams that know how to play and you'll get scoring. But the disparity in women's soccer is way worse than the disparity in men's. I mean, it's a joke.
Is it as bad as the disparity in women's boxing, where you had 2 or 3 women in the history of the sport that could actually box a little bit, and the rest of it was, I mean, just blatant mismatches?
Oh yeah.
You were thinking, my God, how could anybody? What state organization sanctioned this bout? Hey. What are we doing here, Lubie? I mean, we haven't really accomplished much. The whole gist of it was to say that people that are defending soccer, after watching this, I'm trying, Lubie, I'm legitimately trying with an open mind to watch this and say, okay, what is it that I really like about this game? What?
I mean, I don't know. Look, I'm not trying to say.
Starney's talking about great human interest stories. He's all over. He was sobbing with Rinaldi about Dennis Rodman's daughter.
Yeah,
they did a feature on her.
He's like the best player at like 19. He didn't raise her, right? Like, there's no way he was down here.
No, he had nothing to do with her, supposedly. Okay. Very limited contact.
She's in California, and we were here. Like, if she's 19 now, the years we were doing the tiki shows, that he was there every week.
Rodman was out of his mind the entire time. Yeah.
like, so there's no way he had any, because they keep bringing up that she's Rodman, but it's like a Karl Malone situation, right? Like he had no involvement in
No,
bringing up this girl at all.
it was almost. I don't know. Dr. J probably had more involvement with what's her first name? Stevenson. Very lovely young girl who became a tennis star, and then all of a sudden we discovered it was like Dr. J's love child, and you were like, what? Very, very. She's doing some commentary now, actually, either with Tennis Channel or who's carrying Wimbledon? NBC, right? Isn't that a big NBC thing? And she was, decent. Didn't really accomplish a lot in tennis, although she did get to a point where she was very recognizable as a player. And but yeah, who knew? Dr. J had a kid. Did you ever know? No. Rodman, he had made mention of a daughter. Does he have more than one? That would be the other question.
I would presume, yes.
Does he know if he has more than one? Rodman would be a guy that could easily have lost count.
Oh, for sure.
I don't know that he was churning out children by the dozen. I mean, it wasn't like he was going to struggle to name them all. Who was the guy, the defensive back, Cromartie, right?
Cromartie, yeah, Crow.
That was probably. I mean, people always talk about what wasn't that in that Jets 2010 Hard Knocks?
They were all 3 or 4 years old. He just kept naming.
It was amazing. Yeah, we had the standard joke there that Cromartie had more good 3-year-olds in the barn than Bob Baffert. Baffert's horse went down in flames, man, in the Haskell Invitational. Just faded. Arabian Night. I think they paid $4 million for this horse. He's run 3 times now. I believe the other 2 were victories, and had been off for a while. I mean, had some reason not to necessarily be quite in good enough shape to win the thing, but got bet down to even money in that thing. And the 57-year-old Mike Smith, congratulations. Mike was always a really good guy, stand-up guy. Remember, I was doing a interview show at the Flagler Dog Track when that was open, now Magic City Casino. But hardly a destination that was frequented by the upper echelon at that period of time. It was sort of in a little bit of stage of deterioration before it became a casino, and nobody cared about dog racing anymore. And Mike, in the middle of an afternoon, drove himself down there. Couldn't have given us a better time in terms of our interview. And I always kind of rooted for the guy, although my friend Piscataway Ray will never forgive him. You ever have a guy that just goes off in a rage about something that happened in the distant past? Talking about a degenerate gambler. You've seen it more than experienced it. I guess from a sports fan standpoint, you've experienced this also, or even done it yourself, where you're like, are you kidding me? Just like in fucking 1973, Smitty. When you stiffed that horse in the Jerome, and you're like, what are you talking about? Where is this coming from? How could you even retain that? But very much like the Niagara Falls routine. You mentioned Mike Smith to my friend Piscataway Ray, and the first thing that comes out of his mouth, you can guarantee it. You can time it. You can just lip sync along with him as he says, fucking Smitty. And you're like, why is it always fucking Smitty? I mean, every guy that, talks about a guy named Smith probably at some point has alluded to him as fucking Smitty. But he hates him. 57 years old, still riding winners there. What was it? Go Red Rocket? Was that the name of the horse? Something like that. Won the Haskell Invitational. That was nice. Paid $27. And he's back out in California riding the next day. Pretty good shape. All right, we're coming back with more here on the show. Glenn Geffner going to join us, 8:30? Glenn? Did I start to introduce Glenn Geffner and then go totally off track there, talking about the Dolphins and my tyrannical, usual satirical rap on soccer?
I don't even know if you were near Glenn Geffner. You were just all over the place around soccer.
Oh, I was talking about how he got hosed by the Marlins organization.
I guess you said that line and then you went totally away from
it. I never mentioned his name. That was good. So we finished the introduction to Glenn Geffner being a guest at 7:55. It took 55 minutes to get his name out here, but it won't take us long to become endeared to what he has to say. This guy, he makes me. I mean, who are the great baseball writers, Lubie, of all time? What would you say? I mean, go back into your Damon Runyon list of tremendous sports writers who really brought the game to light. Now we were very lucky here in town for a while, and we've had many good writers. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I would have to say a very representative group of high-end sports writers worked in this town. Is that a fair statement? mean, it's not like you got a bunch of hacks here with the Miami Herald and the Sun Sentinel. Sun Sentinel had that great sports department there, headed by Jim Sarney, right? Mike Mayo, Dave Hyde's still around. They had a lot of other people that were really good writers. Gordon Eads, though, when he came in, and they brought him in from Boston. I think he'd been doing the Red Sox for years for like the Globe, and they brought him in the first year of the Marlins to be the Marlins baseball writer. Imagine they actually cared enough to want to bring in like a top quality guy. But he was a lot of fun to read, whether he was writing a game story or any kind of a feature or doing analysis on a team. Gordon Eads, I believe he's still at it. Is he back in Boston, Gordon Eads?
I don't know. I like Eads and I like Gammons. And I know the professor's freaking out because they're Boston people, but I always like Peter Gammons and I always like Gordon Eads.
Boston had excellent sports writers, no doubt.
They had a Hall of Fame. I mean,
yeah,
staff was ridiculous,
including our own lovely and talented one, Leslie Visser there.
Yep.
Right. I mean, it's not bad when you got Bud Collins covering tennis for you, right? I mean,
started there as well.
That's right. And Mayo, I mean, had a little
started there as well. Had a
cup of coffee there at the Boston Globe. All right, so there's our tribute to Gordon Eads. But I mean, of the classical guys, like who are the guys that you think of, right? Writing baseball?
I named the two guys I know. I don't know.
Who's the guy? Scott something. He's on the West Coast. Osler. He was a good baseball writer. He was writing the Dodgers when I first moved out to L.A. Scott Osler. He can write a good baseball story. Herald Examiner, the LA Herald Examiner had a lot of good baseball writers also, although their names escape me. But naturally, there was a big focus on the Dodgers in Los Angeles, so you had to have a top guy writing baseball for you. Now what? I mean, papers don't even have sports sections anymore. How weak is that? TV stations have just gone ahead and dismissed their entire sports staff and now have anchors doing it. The traffic girl gives you the sports. That doesn't do a bad job, by the way. What? I mean, you rarely see an unattractive traffic woman.
No,
is that true, Libby?
Never. I don't think I've ever seen one that weather or traffic. That's like, oh, who's that?
Wow.
Like, what are they doing?
Yeah, you don't see a lot of overweight weather men. But by the way, you don't see like a guy that looks like Butterbean Ash giving you the weather.
You used to have the guy.
That guys, yeah.
What's the guy that did the birthdays every morning? And
Scott Willard Scott.
Didn't he do weather at one point? And then
he wasn't fat though. I mean, Roker was a big tub too, wasn't he?
Big dude. Roper before he did whatever surgery he did.
Roker. I mean, he overdid it too, right?
He looks horrendous.
How did Al Sharpton lose all that weight?
A big hardy dude. I don't know. I think he had a disease, but he looks like shit too. He looks like he's death's door.
Boy, he looks emaciated. Yeah,
he just looks like death's door. But like, there used to be the weatherman used to be a big hulking man. Now it's a guy that was like a former male model. That's a meteorologist.
not to be disparaging to heavyset people, but there's these commercials for and they pop up all the time, especially on degenerate networks and during the news. But these commercials for all these various medications, and there's one called Jardiance, I think it is, and I'm not sure exactly what it does.
I don't know what it does.
Okay, is that the skin one? I'm not sure. Maybe I have this wrong. But there's sort of a heavy-set woman, and she's dancing by some fountain. And then she goes through an outfit change and continues to dance later on with a bunch of dancers in the background as if she's at Disney World celebrating the fact. Have you ever taken any medication and just run outside and started dancing, Lubie, besides any kind of hallucinogenic drug? I mean, I'm talking about, pharmaceutical drugs where and prescription variety that are designed not, to get you high, but to fight disease. Did you ever find yourself doing that, Louie? Like just dancing up A1A the whole way, singing. Da 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 da.
I've never taken a headache medicine and gone,
right?
Hallelujah.
The fuck? Why is that like advertising? People think that, okay, you're going to take this pill and immediately start dancing like a fool. Like you're Julianne Hough or something, which is another one of those bizarre commercials where why is it necessary if you go to Rooms to Go? Will you really? Have you ever bought anything at Rooms to Go and then started dancing on the couch?
No, that would be the opposite.
It would, the main would balsa would. It would just snap in half. What are you talking about? I don't care how lonely this girl is. Jesus. We're really going to be led to believe that all this woman does is go through 7 outfit changes in a half a minute and dance all over the furniture. What a life this woman is leading. Why would she ever leave the house if she was that happy there? Unbelievable. All right, we're coming back with more in a moment. Is it Jardiance? What is that? It's not Ozempic.
Diabetes.
That's another one that drives me crazy.
Oh, Jardiance is another diabetes drug. So they
That's what it
probably
is. Okay, so they got this heavy set woman that makes sense. Okay, and
yeah.
she's being pampered, but she's dancing. And I'm thinking, really, I don't know. I've never taken, any prescribed medication and found myself dancing in the streets.
You've
Did you,
actually
Louis?
had drugs help you move better, and I
Oh
still don't
yeah,
call you ever dancing because of it.
it certainly didn't work with Quaaludes. I mean, I remember the first time I, got wind of what that was, which I wasn't a big pill guy. But I came to my dormitory room. I was living. This was like a novel concept at the time. They had just started having co-ed dormitories where you had men and women in the same building and on the same floor. And I remember coming home about 2 in the morning one day, one evening, and everybody was passed out in the hallway. Did you ever experience that in any of your dormitory living?
I never lived in a dorm.
Like literally, they were lined up in the hallway, like 30 people, and they were all like out cold. Kind of like when you walk by a hotel and there's like the tray of food, and you're thinking, do I take a bite of that burger? Mayo might.
100%. Mayo's definitely done that.
We'll have to ask him that on the show today. Yeah, we will be with Mike Mayo, 12 o'clock today, and a very celebrated edition of the program, Mike Mayo's Lunchbox, as Tropical Acres doing a special serving for us only so we could do a live show there because they're not open for lunch.
Yes. Do we get?
Wow.
I wonder if we get the lobster special on when they're not open.
Yeah. Is that like the pre-early bird? I mean, I would imagine
When we get the
special
happy
pricing will be in place for us. I'll pick up the check today. How about that?
hour, I'm sure you will. I'll fight you for it.
Yeah. Then we'll let Mayo leave the tip. All right. All right, we're coming back with more. Glenn Geffner going to join us. We'll talk some baseball. The Marlins still in the chase. They go tonight, and they will send out Cabrera against Glasnow. Both those guys are at 500 as their one-loss record. Does one-loss record mean much anymore? I mean, you're paying $350 million for a pitcher like Garrett Cole, and he never gets out of the sixth inning. I don't know. Is that good? You're paying this guy such a substantial sum. Wouldn't you think you let him go like 7, 8, 9?
Yeah,
Or is that like a smart move by Aaron Boone that he always takes him out after 6 1/3?
you
What do
want
you
to
think?
conserve them so much because you pay so much that you actually negate what they do. Like great pitchers get better as the game goes on,
Right.
and they sort of are negating that now. Like, look at Alcantara. As bad as Alcantara's been, most of his stuff's early in the game. Like
Always gets trounced in the first or second inning.
when they've left him in, it actually evens out eventually. But like you then get worried about having him get hurt. So I don't know. It's a weird. Baseball is fucking weird now. Like I don't understand how. Like, what made pitchers great was the fact that they were workhorses, and now they've sort of gotten rid of that.
The losing streak of the Marlins, I have to admit, and the break for the All-Star game sort of has me, lost in terms of my momentum I was gathering on overall baseball, at least a peripheral knowledge of what was happening in the major leagues this year.
Yep.
There are a lot of great stories, a lot of good things happening. Once again, I never was. Here's one. Maybe you soccer people can turn me around because, and Jim Sarney took a giant step in that direction. With the degenerate aspect of this, who wouldn't fall in love with a game where you go 14-1 on like a cinch? Like that Vietnam is not scoring. They didn't even take a shot. And then that's the other thing that Sarney pointed out, which makes sense actually, that these weenie teams are just trying to hang in there. They're going Roger Nielsen, center ice trap, and they just want to stall and delay and limit the scoring opportunities for the opposition because they're trying to hang in there and maybe carve out a draw, so they can get the 1 point in the early going, and that might make the difference in them staying alive in the tournament. But this is mismatch city, isn't it, Lubie? I mean, what they've done so far, it's a disgrace. Japan over Costa Rica. Japan is like minus 2,000. Canada and the Republic of Ireland, relatively close. Ireland is a 5-1 underdog. You get 5-1 on them plus. United States, wait a minute. Oh, okay, this is to win the group. So I'm reading this wrong. All right, these teams are not matching up. U.S., though, is only a slight favorite over the Netherlands, minus 140 on the U.S. Would you take that? Lay
Uh,
140 to win 100, or would
yeah,
you be tempted to take the Netherlands in the upset there? And you're getting plus 380 on that, almost 4-1. What do you think?
It's a win the game, I think. U.S. is.
I can't wait for that game, huh, Lubie? I'm looking
Yeah,
forward to
what
Woo!
a death match.
that.
Watched any of the ones. I won't lie, like a couple World Cups ago, I did get into it a little bit. Like after when you had
that Mia Hamm, Brandy
Morgan,
Chastain team, that was kind of fun. No,
that one I watched. I got into that, but then there was also the one with
Julie
Morgan,
Foudy. I mean, she was
Hope
good.
Solo, and you had young Rapinoe, and you had young Abby Wambach. Like that group, I did watch.
Yeah.
I would watch them, but I've never watched like every women's World Cup match like I do with the men. Like the men I'll watch, I'm not gonna lie. The women I've never been able to just watch Zambia and Morocco. Like that I've never been able to do. So I don't know. I give Sarnia credit. I can't get
Well,
that.
I mean, 15 reasons. Sonia gave me 15 reasons to love the game. The first 15 games, which tantamount to being some of the biggest stiffs that you'll ever see in terms of sports competition. Nonetheless, absolutely a marvelous elixir for your losing streak that you're on, people. Unders 12-1, and both teams scoring 14-1 through 15 games. A gift.
That's too many.
How did we overlook this, Lubie? We would have been going the other way, going, well, it's got to balance out eventually. You know, they're going to get a goal somehow, a fluke.
Yeah, so you switch after the first round, but the first round, I would go all in on that theory.
How did we not know this before the tournament got started? Now I am so upset. I hate the game even more. How did we miss this?
It's a stupid.
We, who qualify ourselves as card-carrying members of the degenerate brethren, and we miss this? Where's Stu Feiner when you need him? Unbelievable.
Yeah, I haven't heard any handicapper bringing that up at all.
Nobody. I'm reading the Barry America stuff here in the New York Post. Action, bet smart. France can learn this messy lesson about how Argentina, I guess, got knocked out. Are they talking about that there's not a men's tournament going on coincidental with this, is there? Some men's tournament? The Men's World Cup is like 2026, isn't it?
It just happened.
Just happened.
Yeah, remember?
Okay, yeah, 2022. Yeah, exactly. And this one's is this the one that's going to be in like Saudi Arabia or wherever the hell it is, where they're going to tunnel under the desert?
Qatar just happened. The Qatar one just happened.
Oh, okay. So where's this next one?
I think it's here.
Well, that's right. They have some games
that's
here.
The one that's here. That's the one that is North America.
Oh, North Canada.
It's North America, but South Florida is going to get a lot of matches. I think.
Very excited about that. Maybe I'll have acquired an even deeper love for the game here.
That's what I'm hoping.
By the time, I mean, is that true? Does this hold up in the men's event also? There's this bullshit of every game is a shutout.
There's disparity.
That's 14-1 shutouts.
No, it's not.
Shutouts. 14-1 out of 15 games.
No, disparity is not like it is in the women's. The women's disparity is fucking ridiculous.
Unbelievable. All right, there you have it, as Soli would say. Once again, well, we're coming back with more. Glenn Geffner going to join us. He'll illuminate some of the things that are happening in Major League Baseball. You have the trade deadline. Is that August 1st?
I think it's.
Is that what it is? I mean, it's like right around the corner here, Lubie. Teams are making deals. The Braves got a couple of relievers. I don't know what the Marlins do at this point. You're there on the threshold. I mean, you could change the entire opinion of South Florida about whether or not to get interested in this team in the future. I think a postseason bid here would be huge, would it not?
Look, I'm not saying do what they did in 2003 when you traded one of the best baseball prospects in Adrian Gonzalez, who would have been great in a Marlins uniform for years, for an Ugi Urbina because you were going on a stretch run. I'm not saying unload your top prospects for like a guy that you're not going to be able to keep, but they do need a bullpen arm and they do need a bat. And it's on Ang to figure that out. You can't just stand. You can't have sold off for the last 5 years, get rid of all those guys that you did to get to this place where you're finally winning and not do something. I'm sorry. They have to do something.
I think this is one they need to cash in on, no?
Yes, they have to do something. Whatever Brian Schwartz wants to say, yes, they haven't been selling out. They've had a massive uptick in fan interest for this club.
They've been drawing what looks like almost a halfway respectable crowd of about 20,000, it seems
In
like.
the 20s, as opposed to the 11. They were averaging literally 11,000. Now they're averaging like between 22 and 25. Okay.
Their attendance is still, I believe, the second lowest. Didn't we look that up about a week ago?
It was 3 months of 11,000, and then got 1 month of 20 something.
They were only eclipsed in terms of ineptitude in that category by the Oakland A's, who have already said, "Hey, stick it up your ass.
We're moving.
We're moving."
Whatever you want to say about it's bad, they have to do something. They've gotten an uptick in fans. They've gotten an uptick in interest. People have talked about them in the season, which never happens. You can't just stand pat. They have to do something to show, look, we're in. We told you once we had a winning team, we'd put money toward it. We're doing that. At least to me. If they don't do that, then they can go fuck themselves.
All right.
They'll lose me.
All right. So you're saying make a move, or that's it. Lubie's throwing in the towel.
Well, if you don't make a move, you're telling us that you were fucking lying to our faces. That you did all that stuff.
Not uncommon in sports.
And Ozuna, Riamuto, you got rid of all those guys, and you never planned on winning ever.
Different regime there, though, I guess. I mean, Jeter, a lot of people look. Dave Hyde, scathing indictment of Derek Jeter's tenure here, and it's pretty easy to condemn him. Maybe he was right, maybe he wasn't. It seemed like he was sort of distant the entire time, and could have been much more of a catalyst than an ombudsman, and an ambassador for getting behind the Marlins franchise. Except that they weren't winning, and he seemed to be at odds with Sherman and his philosophies. No. Which we don't know. I mean, has Bruce Sherman ever spoken? Ever? Thus spoke Zarathustra. When is this guy? I know he's been occasionally, he's gotten up and said, well, we'd like to welcome our new manager to the ball club here, and we really think this is going to be a great success. Here's Scotty Schumacher. And you're like, okay, good. Let's see what this guy can do. But
Schumacher.
Yeah. Well, what is it? Schumacher, right?
Skip Schumacher.
Skip. Scoop. Yeah, Skip. Scoop. One of these guys. Anyway, but that's about it, right? That's the limit of what we've seen from Bruce Sherman.
Yeah,
he stated, publicly that he's into this and he really wants to do something. I don't know. Nobody's really said, "Hey, Bruce Sherman is a criminal and he's a bad guy."
No, but
seems like he has a favorable opinion among the public. No,
if they don't capitalize on what they have now, then he's not better than the other guys. Like that's the thing.
Is he broke? What is the story? Is this Bruce McDowell?
He doesn't have money at all, but it doesn't matter. Like, you're here, you're on the precipice of winning, do something. You have clear issues that other ball clubs would go and look. The Braves don't have any fucking issues, and they went and made moves. Like, you have major holes. I don't know if you're going to win a World Series. I don't know if you're going to get 10 for one, but I'll tell you right now, you can't just stand pat. You better do something. You better do something, or you're signaling to us you were full of shit. You're just like every other owner.
I love it then. You're going to, absolutely turn your back on these guys like Paul Sorvino.
It's not turning the back. I just will lose any goodwill they've built this season, which I didn't think they were going to. I thought it would take to the playoffs. I was wrong. People started coming out in a way they never have in season since the inaugural. People never come.
Looks like people want to support the team more so than they have in the past.
People have tried to support them. If you don't give them something, I don't see why people would continue.
Be nice to be excited about it. That's for sure. I mean, if this could perpetuate itself through the baseball season, and then maybe getting off to a strong start in the football season, Lubie, with both the college team here in town, the big team anyway, the Miami Hurricanes. I don't mean to diminish, the efforts of FIU, FAU, and all of that. Is FAU going to become a juggernaut in football now too?
I don't know about
that'd be weird, wouldn't it?
I think with Herman, they'll be interesting. I think he's going to be the kind like a Lane Kiffin, where he'll use his position the way, I don't know what happened to Taggart. Taggart was decent enough a coach. He should have been able to take advantage of schmanky competition.
There was something about Taggart that, I mean, you would think would not be capable of igniting a spark in this type of a program.
He just didn't have that. We talked to him as much as we talked to the other guys. There wasn't that fire.
He was so flat, wasn't he?
Look, it was very much like, and it's not a race thing because there are plenty of black coaches that are fiery. And you don't have to yell at guys to be fiery. It just, that, I don't know.
But I would think, people should be aware of the Schnellenberger syndrome here, which is, especially with this kind of a program, you have to do something to sell this program. You can't be an absent personality and just sit back and, well, you know what? Coach doesn't do anything but coach.
No, there needs to be a charisma. Kiffin had a charisma. Yeah. The funny thing is Partridge did have a charisma, and Partridge stocked the talent leading to Kiffin having success. So Partridge was close, and you and
Yeah.
I believed if he got a couple more years, he would have gotten there. But it is what it is. Taggart
He
didn't have.
didn't bring in that guy out of prison that Kiffin sprung loose somehow on some work release, and he got like a quarterback who was 37 years old who came in there. Didn't that help the program?
It did.
They had some remarkable spike in talent when Kiffin came in, and it didn't come from illicit sources. No question.
But Herman feels like that kind of a guy. And look, Coach Mack, who we're going to talk with next week, sort of feels like that kind of guy.
This guy's enthusiasm, Coach McIntyre, is unbelievable.
We'll see if they do something. But yes, is squarely the program people are concerned.
Well, and people, I guess, is it just fanatics that are screaming? Look, we were not particularly, impressed with what Mario Cristobal did last year. Because I thought, you know what, if you have inferior talent and it's not the talent that you would have brought to the roster, that's one thing. But if you're this good of a coach that, you're worth like $800 million and, sacrificing everything that was going on in the program prior to your coming here and just capitulating to anything that you wanted, that you said was necessary to get the job done, shouldn't you, just by the nature of being a really good coach, have been able to coach this talent up a notch as opposed to having it drop off the face of the planet where, you had a Heisman Trophy candidate quarterback who all of a sudden sucks? I mean, look, and it could be that the kid, just went south. I mean, that's possible. But I would have expected more out of the coaching staff last year. Mario Cristobal brought in terms of being able to say, the old he can take you in and beat you in, that type of thing. That explains nothing, right?
Oh, I mean, the staff, the team went backwards. Like as the year went.
How is that possible? Right, that you could be so bad. Stupid plays too that were doing you in, penalties and
they have
bonehead plays.
I think a new OC and a new DC. We'll see if that's for the better. People heralded their OC and their.
It was Manny Diaz all over again, though, wasn't it?
So we'll see. I don't know. I don't know what to do with the Canes. Canes fans are excited, and I guess they should be. I am a little bit more skeptical about their season. I don't think Cristobal is good at coaching. I think he took a lot and did less with it at Oregon. Like people talk about, well, he made Rose Bowls. Yeah. And they lost 3 games every year, except for 1 year. And that was like what A&M did. That was the COVID year. Every other year he found a way to lose games he was supposed to win. And he did it repeatedly.
Yeah. Not overwhelmingly impressive in that category. I mean, you're not thinking this is Nick Saban here, finds a way to win all the time.
Oh, the opposite.
Yeah. All right, we'll see. A lot of optimism about that, but it'd be nice to see this baseball season continue, and it would be great. I'm tired of the whole business of the Marlins being trash, and then you're having to, unfortunately, I mean, look, we spent years trying to shill for the Marlins a little bit.
We did. Yes.
We weren't shilling. We were sincerely, trying to believe. We weren't looking for much, though.
No, you were trying to believe. I'll give you that. You were trying to find an angle that gave us hope each and every year.
I wanted to root for these guys. I really did. But, it was, unfortunately very expensive. Losing 3 out of 4 years to the drive for 75. It was Deal Volkswagen's money, so I couldn't complain, and I did get a piece of the winnings during that one season, the COVID year, when they played 60 games and they managed to win like 30 of them, and so they made the postseason. All right, Glenn Geffner is going to join us probably about 10 minutes from now. We'll come back with more in a moment here on the Defo Show. Mike Mayo's Lunchbox live from Tropical Acres today. Yes. You cannot join us out there live, but you can log on either here on South Florida Live, our YouTube channel, or on Let's Eat South Florida, the Facebook page. That is a massive hit and is spiraling out of control in terms of the results it's getting for people. So you can join us there, and it'll be a pleasure being.
Did you see he met this guy that was from Cincinnati, and of course he loved Skyline, whatever.
I don't even think he really likes it. I think he just likes to be, an irritant.
Mayo likes it. Yeah. Mayo actually likes it.
Oh, he buys it frozen, which
he
says
at home. He likes
a lot.
It.
Yeah, no, that's sick.
So he met this guy from Cincinnati, and this guy clued him into this Cincinnati food group that actually is double what Let's Eat.
Oh yeah,
wow. See the fucking rules? Like, there's no way that would work. If you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Yeah, well, that's Cincinnati, yeah.
That wouldn't work in South
Florida. How did they elect Jim Jordan to a political seat in Ohio? If they're so nice.
No, well, he's a criminal. They're good at it being delusional. I think it's funny. Like, it's not all negative. I think that's a wrong
They
opinion.
thought Woody Hayes was,
Yeah, sweetheart.
above reproach.
Yeah, exactly. But there is, I think you do need some constructive.
Urban Meyer. Yeah.
Like, how do you have a site like that that's never negative?
Well, it defeats the purpose of it, right? I mean, you don't want it to turn into just. It's not necessarily a good thing if anybody that's just trashing a joint without any real foundation. And competitors can put things in there. I don't know that goes on so much here, does it?
No, that's the thing. It's usually people who are going to eat.
Yeah.
It's not.
I find most of the stuff is positive that's on there. I don't get into the fetching about tipping or any of that stuff because I tip according to what I think is appropriate. Okay.
Yeah, I think anyone should.
And having been in the industry there on that receiving end of tips, I think anybody that was in the service business at any time, whether you're a bartender or a waiter, whatever, you're probably a more generous tipper than the average person because you know what it's like, right? You don't want to sit there and, you're busting your buns to please people. And then all of a sudden, after they've been super friendly to you and told you how wonderful you are and how great the food was and what a dynamite experience it was, and thank you so much. And then they leave you 8% on 200, right? And you're like, yeah, thank you. I knew that, though, in that business, it would balance out. See, if you just go ahead and do your job right, it usually balances out. Unless, like, you're working at, what? You think the tips are good at a Waffle House, Lubie? Does it depend on the place you're at?
No, those tips are horrendous. What are you talking about? People aren't tipping there.
Some truck driver, I mean, he has a $20 check. Is he only leaving $1? Is that the way that goes?
Tips there are not good. You're not getting tons of tips at that place.
Yeah, it's tough. Breakfast is a tough meal. I used to serve breakfast at that health food joint I was working in on the Sunset Strip. And yeah, you would see some really feeble tips. And you're thinking, you're starring on 3 quiz shows, and you're going to leave me this, 10% tip? You got to be kidding me. I always hoped that I used to wait on the Captain and Tennille. Remember those two?
Those are group, yes.
What did they have? Did they have Muskrat Love? Was that their big hit? Muskrat Love? Does that ring a bell with you?
Yeah. I think
had some really stupid songs. I mean, like bad songs that get stuck in your head and you can't get them out of your head.
Elevator
Which
music.
Fortunately don't remind me of them because I have them out of my head now. But if she paid, Tennille, very lovely lady and very gracious, you were getting stooped pretty good. And if he paid, he was a cheapskate, man. Guys that wear like a sailor cap all the time scare the fuck out of me. What do you think, Lubie? Guys that are constantly
that's weird.
Like in a sailor hat.
I think it's weird. A guy that wants to be called captain or whatever. It's like
Popeye syndrome. Yeah, exactly. What is that? I know it's an act and you're an entertainer, but let's ditch the hat, huh?
Yeah,
all right, we're coming back with Mark. Glenn Geffner going to join us. We'll talk a little baseball coming up. But yeah, you were always rooting for. I always just shovel a check towards her, and hope that she broke out the credit card. All right, and imagine. I mean, it had to have an enormous limit on it. I mean, they were churning out number 1 hits right after one after another. All right, back with more in a moment here on the Defo Show. Now that
the time,
he was a cheapskate. It's 8:23.
Folks, Tony Segreto here. Let me ask you a question. What do you look for when you go out to eat? Good food, obviously, friendly atmosphere, not too loud, but good energy, reasonable prices, and a place where you feel comfortable. All those ingredients, no pun meant there, are hard to find unless you're talking about the Texas Roadhouse. You see, they encompass all of those attributes. Really, really good food, amazing atmosphere, good for a family, good for a date, or just a night out for yourself, and prices that will make you extremely happy. Their ribs unmatched, steaks hand-cut every day. Everything, and I mean everything, is made on site, including their incredible bread. It's the one day, folks, that you can forget about low-carb diets. Trust me when I tell you, Texas Roadhouse, your restaurant, your destination when you say, where should we go and eat tonight?
From the newly renovated sports bar to the beautiful bayside views captured at the Tiki Bar, Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill has it all. Located at mile marker 104, the Big Chill also offers waterfront dining while experiencing breathtaking sunset views of the Florida Keys. It's simply the hottest spot in the Keys to cool off. That's Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill at mile marker 104 in Key Largo. For more information, call today at 305-453-9066.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't get your question.
You were a coach that you coached all kinds of teams. You had teams that...
Hey, say it in English. Got it?
Enjoy your trip to work with lots of laughs thanks to Defo and Lubie. Now on the Defo Show.
All right, welcome back to the show, the Defo Show here on a Tuesday morning. Jeff DeForest, Mike Lubie Lubitz. A couple of minutes from now, or very shortly, we will connect with the great Glenn Geffner, who we're still upset. I mean, if the Marlins organization, they've made more than their share of blunders over the years. Would you agree, Mike Lubie Lubitz? They do have 2 world championships, and that would be the rationale. Yeah, well, the Mets haven't won that many during that period of time, and so that's great. But the last one was in 2003.
The Mariners still have never been in a World Series. They've been around since well before the Marlins.
Terrific. I mean, look, 97, that was brilliant. I'll never forget, and it was one of those MasterCard moments. It really was, where I've told the story many times about, my son. I offered him the chance to scalp our 2 tickets for Game 7 of the World Series behind home plate to see the Marlins and the Indians. Series tied, obviously, 3-3. You had Al Leiter, very suspect pitcher on the mound. Leiter was not having a great season, did not finish the year all that well, was having an unfortunate tendency, Sandy Alcantara syndrome, of getting shelled early in games. And I remember, I'm on the edge of my seat with a guy that we called Gadget Man, because a guy sat in front of me. He would have like one of those Vinny Pazienza triangle pyramids on his head. Like a gold pyramid.
The neck thing. You mean the neck?
But it was to get reception. He was getting reception of different games from around the world. I don't know. The guy was crazy, right? And we were on the edge of our seat because we were so worried about Al Leiter's first pitch getting tagged for a home run.
Oh, him starting that game stressed me out.
Oh my God! And then he dropped a little breaking ball into the strike zone, and we thought, we're in there with a shot.
Exactly.
Literally, like a blindfold and a cigarette. We were watching this pitch with, and I'll never forget it. And I'm so glad that my son, although I don't know, the 1500 probably would have looked good. Imagine that, right behind home plate, World Series game. I would have been lucky to get $7.50 a copy on those tickets, which I think they were selling for $75 face value. If you can, picture that. Also, this was 1997. But having been at that game, I would have to say it was of far more value to me than the 1500 would have been to my son. And I believe he feels the same way. But it's been 20 years since. And we've gone through a lot of different things, including, having, I don't know, that kind of came out of nowhere, didn't it? The rise for hope with the team. We were talking about all the moves they made during the offseason, and we deemed them via Dave Hyde as being largely cosmetic. And, Lubie, you've been trashing the batting order and saying that they just don't have anything that you can sink your teeth into. Let's get to the bottom of it, though. And here's a guy that we have nothing but deep respect for. And he was always just a pleasure to have on the air when we weren't really shilling for the Marlins, Lubie. I don't think that's a fair way to, kind of depict what we were doing. We were rooting for them to win more than 75 games, it seemed like, every year because we had money on it.
Yeah, we were honest. You were very honest about it. You made sure that people knew there was a gambling interest, and obviously you can root for your gambling interests.
The bar was not particularly high, but it was high enough to be torturous.
No one ever looked at us like we were full. Like, it was never like they were supposed to win 80.
Yeah,
they were really a 60-win club. Like, the numbers were always like, it was always. I would always make sure people knew. You understand, people who would give us crap. This is a bad season. Like, if you're winning 74 games, that's not a good year. Like, that's a bad year. So it's not like we're saying
not for us.
World Series. Yeah. We're just being realistic. Why can't they win 76 instead of 72?
Let's get to the bottom of it. Glenn Geffner joins us here, and of course, he was a longtime play-by-play man in Major League Baseball with the Padres, and then did a brilliant job on the radio on 940 Wins with the Marlins games. And unfortunately, it's kind of like firing the hitting coach, I guess, where the Marlins said, well, we can save a few bucks here. We're paying Soler $14 million. We got to get rid of the announcer. And we miss you very much so, Glenn Geffner on the games. Were you ever inclined to embrace the drive for 75? I know we had talked about it on the air. Did it ever pop up in your mind as you were talking about like some walk-off home run that, there it is? They're
on a daily basis.
Yeah.
on a daily basis, no question about that. You go into spring training every year hoping you can get into the playoffs, hoping you can get to the World Series. But when the reality sets in at some point that maybe this isn't going to be the year, you start thinking about the drive for 75. What's best for Defo and Lubie? That's ultimately what was in play down the stretch a lot of years.
It's kind of like the track announcer that has money on the six, and you can tell by the tone of his voice that his money is going up in smoke. Glenn, how are you? Good to talk to you. And how are things going? I see you're putting out some really, really interesting stuff there on social media. Tell us about how we can access these wonderful articles you're writing.
Well, it's great to be with you guys. I am writing a Substack about 5, 6 days a week, talking a lot about the Marlins and Major League Baseball. If you go to GlennGeffner.substack.com, you can subscribe and become a member of our Substack community. I tweet the articles out every day. I put them out on Facebook as well. And it's been amazing to me how quickly this thing has kind of taken off. And it's been a lot of fun to be able to sit back kind of at 30,000 feet now and not be right in the middle of the fire on a daily basis and have maybe a bit more perspective than you have when you're right there in the middle of it. It's easier to step back and see the big picture and to look ahead and around the corner from this perspective I currently have. Certainly the paycheck was better from the other perspective,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's easier now to
It's early,
kind of
though.
step
It's
back.
early. Yeah.
It's but it's been a lot of fun for me, and I think those who have subscribed have enjoyed the content we've been putting out on a regular basis. I've been doing that. I'm still doing my boot camp where I'm working with young aspiring play-by-play broadcasters, mostly high school and college students who want to get into play-by-play, and you can learn more about that at GlennGeffner.com. You can access my Substack through that website as well. So keep them busy. Still, quite honestly, in the last couple of months, I've begun to look for what that major next chapter is going to be. So if anybody out there is looking for somebody with a lot of broadcasting experience, a lot of communications experience as a senior level executive, I'm here. But enjoying kind of taking a step back this year, having a quieter summer than I've had in more than 3 decades, some family time, and having a chance to watch and listen to you guys on a regular basis.
Oh my goodness! I mean, then you really do have to consider your future
Something's wrong with you.
and going in another direction.
Well,
Louis has something for you, Glenn. I mean, he's ready to throw in the towel on the Marlins
Oh,
already if they don't make a
throwing
deal.
towels, but going in another direction. The Marlins have been in the playoff hunt the entire year, so maybe that's why we haven't talked that much. We haven't been able to bitch, but we do love your perspective on the Marlins and baseball in general. But and look, Jim Cerny, longtime Sun Sentinel writer. I'm sure you come across him. He always sets me straight. I've been, for a team that was winning, I've been very honest about their holes and their issues. And right out of the All-Star break, you literally saw those holes, whether it be the lineup or the bullpen, sort of rear their old, ugly head. I get it. You don't just make moves to make moves. However, for a club that hasn't gone all in, and it seems like they're sort of doing that now, do you see them being active around the trade deadline? And if they're not, what does that say about where the club is?
I think they have to be. This is the best chance the Marlins have had in a full season since 2003. And when you come in as a new owner and say, we're here to win, and now you're 6 years in and you haven't won, but you have a chance this year, they're right in the hunt. I think you have to be aggressive. And when they've gone out of their way, as they have in recent weeks, talk about the fact that Kim Ng has the resources she needs to go out and make deals at the deadline this year, you have to do that. Now, it's not easy to do when with the expanded playoffs, you have more teams than ever in the hunt. You have more buyers than you've had in the past. A lot of teams looking for the exact same thing. So it's not easy to say we're going to make some changes and just go out and make those changes. There's competition. You're likely going to have to overpay to make some moves. But I think they have no choice but to be aggressive if they're to be taken seriously by the fans of this community who they're trying to get on their side after all these years. Look, this team has a shot. As you said, it definitely has some holes. I'm going to go back to this one. I've been writing about this literally since April 21st. It's come up so often. I know the date I first wrote about this on April 21st. The Marlins went through a 50-game stretch that began in early May and ran through very late June, where they played virtually nothing but the bottom of MLB, series after series, 50 games against fourth and fifth place teams. They went 32-18 in that stretch.
Wow.
They took care of business. They beat up on the crummy teams.
Yeah.
Outside of that stretch, they're 7 games under 500, 22-29, and now about to enter a stretch beginning at the very end of July where they play a 50-game span, just like that earlier one, that's every bit as hard as that early stretch was easy. So if you just look at the schedule, you realize it's going to be very hard for the Marlins, even with some reinforcements, to play better than they've played to this point in the season the rest of the way. And in fact, they're probably going to play considerably worse simply because they're playing a ton of games against contending teams. You got 2 series against the Dodgers. You play the Rangers. You play the Astros. You got the Braves. You got the Phillies. You got teams all across baseball, the Yankees, that are in the hunt and that are trying to win also and that need to win also. Milwaukee, a couple of series against the Brewers. They play the Reds again, another series. So it's one series after another against really good competition. And you mentioned the lineup, which no question needs to be improved. You mentioned the bullpen. I've been writing about this since very early in the season. Because the Marlins haven't gotten many innings out of the rotation all year, you knew at some point the bullpen was going to hit a wall. And the rotation to me, and I've been talking about this for more than a month. If you read my Substack, you get out in front of this stuff. The rotation to me is actually the biggest issue this team has right now. Because if you go man for man through that rotation, Sandy Alcantara is not Cy Young Sandy this year. And it's not just a slow start anymore. He's a different pitcher. You can't count on him the way you have been able to in the past. Braxton Garrett and Jesus Luzardo both gotten to points where they've never been in the big leagues, throwing way more innings than they've ever thrown before. Braxton Garrett's last month in July has been a real step back. Luzardo's continued to pitch very well. Good for him. Are you ever going to get Trevor Rogers back? You have no idea there. Johnny Cueto is finally back, but what can you expect for sure from him? Cabrera's finally back, but what has he done in the big leagues to convince you that he's going to help put you over the top between now and the end of the year? So when you're fighting for a playoff spot against a lot of teams that are fighting just as hard as you are, to me, this team needs help in the rotation, and that's going to make the bullpen better because you see that bullpen's also hit a wall.
Oh, it's funny. Interesting that you say that because obviously a well-illustrated point, but I'm thinking when you're considering making changes or additions at the trade deadline, what teams aren't looking for either and or a power bat and somebody that can pitch in the late innings?
Exactly.
And yet you're saying that the Marlins need to do just the opposite.
Well, and I think more teams are looking for starting pitching even than some of those other things. And so they're in a tough spot. They really are. They may have resources to spend. And they may eagerly want to spend, but there's going to be a lot of competition to do that, and we'll see how things play out. But I just don't think this is a deadline where you can add a bat off the bench, or you can add another bullpen arm and say, hey, we're done for the day. Let's go get them, guys. Because, one, I don't think that's good enough. And two, I think it sends the wrong message to your clubhouse, where this team in the first half of the season won 53 games. And again, largely it was against crummy competition, but they won more games before the break than any team in Marlins history. You got to give those guys the boost and say, hey, we're behind you. We're trying to get you over the finish line, trying to get you to October. They did it in 2020 when they brought Starling Marte in. That made a huge difference on the team, in the clubhouse and on the field. They've got to do it again, and I don't think it's just one move. Now, the question beyond that is when you have a lot of competition and you realize teams are going to have to overpay if you're going to shop near the top of the market, what do the Marlins have that they're willing to part with? There's not quite as much talent in the minor leagues as there was perceived to be a couple of years ago, between some guys who graduated to the big leagues and others who frankly haven't panned out, or others who've been traded away at this point. And you're not looking to give up anything of substance from your big league roster. So it's tricky. They're in a very tight spot. Kim Ng's greatest strength since coming in has been making some trades that have improved this team, but this will be your biggest test.
Yeah, don't mention Dylan Flora or Avisail Garcia to me, though. I don't know if she was responsible for Flora's presence, but he's one of those guys, Glenn, you probably have people like this in sports that you see, and even though they're supposed to be very good at one thing, like Kyle Korver never made a three-pointer whenever I was watching him shoot, even though he was leading the NBA in percentage for like years. Every time I turn on a game and Dylan Flora's in there, I mean, I know what's going to happen. I just tear up my tickets on the Marlins. Like Mush was coming down the stairs saying, "Come on, Kryptonite," in the Bronx Tale. All right, let's look around Major League Baseball a little bit. Some of the other things that are happening. I mean, there's I'm somewhat of a staunch old school old fart when it came to expansion of the playoffs. I was always opposed to it. I really think it worked this year. I mean, the last couple of years now that they've added in the extra wild card team because so many teams are in the mix. The Marlins probably would be considered hopelessly out of it because of the way the Braves have been playing this year if it wasn't for the wild card period. And now the additional one has many teams trying. Like you said, there are going to be a lot of teams angling for some sort of improvement around the trade deadline. What teams, have impressed you the most? I mean, Cincinnati's been a good story. Arizona's fading right now. I think they've lost 6 in a row, but they've been kind of interesting. You don't normally consider them. Of course, sparked by Zach Gallen, another one of the trades that you look at in Marlin history and say, we had that guy? Are you kidding me? What are you looking at? I mean, is there a team that you're watching right now? I saw somebody on a gambling site. You'll find that surprising, touting the Padres, even though they lost last night. He said they were ready to kind of break out of all of these horrific statistical problems that they were having in terms of batting average and hitting with guys in scoring position, whatever. What do you see? I mean, who are some of the hot teams that you're looking at, or teams that you think are going to climb into the mix?
I can't take my eyes off the Orioles, who are a great story in the American
Okay.
League East. And they, believe it or not, Tampa Bay was 13-0 and 29-7. Now Baltimore has surged into first place in the AL East with a very young
Yes.
team. They're a team like the Marlins that started over. They brought in a new general manager and Mike Elias, who came out of St. Louis and had done a lot of great things with the Cardinals. And through the draft primarily has put together a really good and very dangerous team. You look at that division with the Yankees, with the Blue Jays, all the great talent they have, with the Rays and the start they'd gotten off to. They looked unbeatable for a while. And even with the Red Sox, who've done pretty well this year. And it's Baltimore, of all teams, in first place in that division. Now, that's another team that may need more starting pitching to get over the finish line. We'll see what happens there. I've seen too much in recent years to give up on the Astros, even though they're looking up at the Rangers in the American League West right now. It's interesting. You mentioned teams like the D-backs. Cincinnati's an exciting team with great, young,
Yes.
exciting players.
Yeah,
And you look at Cincinnati with such a great baseball tradition, what a great baseball town it is. They've had a lot of lean years, but now you see 40,000 fans a night turning out in that ballpark in Cincinnati. And it's great for the game. I can't take my eyes off Ellie De La Cruz. I wrote about De La Cruz in my Substack the day he was called up to the big leagues because I had heard a lot and seen a lot of him in the minor leagues. And you knew this is a very unique talent. And boy, every time he takes the field, he does something you feel like you've never seen before, which is really cool. But they've got other young talent there as well. So, what's the common thread? When you look at Baltimore, you look at Cincinnati, teams like that, Arizona, they've got young guys who have stepped into the big leagues and have immediately made major contributions and have kind of changed the culture of their ball clubs. And that's something the Marlins really haven't had as much as they've tried to with some of the younger players. They haven't had guys step in and from day one really take off. Yuri Perez was one of those guys for the handful of starts he was able to make for that to shut him down. So, it's that young energy is huge for teams. You mentioned the Padres. I have a hard time giving up on San Diego. When you look at the core of that team, you think about it, with the expanded playoffs, 6 teams in the National League are going to make the playoffs. The Marlins very much in that mix. But there are 3 teams that at the start of the year, everybody was certain would be in the playoffs: the Padres, the Mets, and the Cardinals. And all 3 of those teams have fallen on their faces. So that's like 3 free playoff spots that are up for grabs right now because of the collapse of those 3 teams. And you hope teams like the Marlins can take advantage of that. But for some reason, I can't see the Mets turning it around, even with all the money they've spent. I do still hold out hope for the Padres. Their pitching, for the most part, has been pretty good. And when you look at the core of that lineup, it's unfathomable that they are where they are.
So the biggest question around this season was the man who's having, statistically, if you take everything into account, possibly the best season ever, Shohei Ohtani. I don't have to ask the question anymore. The Angels are, it's well known, taking offers. So they finally come to the reality. Like, we're probably going to lose this guy because we're not a winning ball club. Why not get a haul? Okay. So I don't have to ask you, should they, shouldn't they? They're going to. It seems like they're taking offers. So that question doesn't need to be asked. What I will ask is, who do you think he makes? Because he's a great player, right? But one great player doesn't necessarily, especially in baseball, win for you. Ask the Mets. Who do you think he makes the best impact on?
Well, here's the thing about Ohtani. He's not one great player. He's really 2 great players because of what he does on the mound every 5 days and what he does at the plate. So we've talked about teams that need to add a bat, teams that need to add a starting pitcher. You add Ohtani, and you add both of those things. Yeah. Now, the question becomes, how much do you give up when you're only guaranteed a half season of Ohtani? And unless you're a team like the Dodgers, like the Yankees, like the Mets, who knows that you have the financial muscle to make a really legitimate run at this guy in the offseason to keep him, are you willing to give up what it would take to get him for the Angels? And I don't think there's a huge market of teams that would be for 50, 60 games of Ohtani. I think it's going to end up being a team that thinks it has a really good shot at keeping him beyond this season. And that's where the Dodgers come in potentially. That's where the Yankees come in. I don't think the Mets are buying on Ohtani at this point with where they are and what they're up against in the National League to get to the playoffs. But I would keep an eye on the Yankees and the Dodgers. And it doesn't mean somebody else can't sneak in and surprise us. But I think you start with teams that know they have a chance to keep them after this year ends.
Glenn Geffner, special guest here on the program, always great. I wanted to see if you would weigh in. We have a new example of the more overrated question. It used to be Bryce Harper or the Stone Crab. Is it Juan Soto or the Stone Crab? What do you think? Juan Soto with his like 260 batting average. I mean, is that really what you look for in your $350 million player?
Boy. Oof.
He walked away from more than $400 million that the Nationals had offered him. Like the Padres, though, I have a hard time getting on Juan Soto. His track record is such, his skills are such that they don't just disappear overnight. There was talk early in the year that the pitch clock was affecting him. And because he has kind of that long routine between pitches where he likes to step out and collect himself and everything, that maybe he just wasn't comfortable.
Hard to hit the ball with one hand in your crunch.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true. What would who was it? Mike Hargrove, right? The human rain delay back in the day. What would Mike Hargrove?
Oh yeah, he was great.
Or Nomar Garciaparra with the batting gloves between pitches and everything. But I like Stone Crabs, but I'm not giving up on Juan Soto yet. I am giving up on him being a $500 million player when he hits free agency, unless things turn around dramatically. And he may look back at what he walked away from in Washington and realize he made a big mistake. But he's still young enough. Juan Soto's younger than Jazz Chisholm, which may be hard to believe.
He has a lot of enthusiasm, Yeah.
Yeah. And he's in a great lineup, and he's in a great baseball environment. I'm not giving up on Juan Soto yet, but I will still go for Stone Crabs.
All right. Well, what do you tell your Met fan friends? I mean, what do you say to them when they start fetching? Hey, can you believe it? This guy can't hit.
What the hell?
I don't know what to say. I think if you look at it now in hindsight, you can say you're taking a risk with Scherzer and Verlander because it's sometime Father Time catches up with everybody. Yeah. And as dominant as Verlander was last year, winning the Cy Young, a 1.75 ERA, Scherzer began to show some cracks, missed some time last year. At some point, those guys are going to no longer be at the elite level. And Verlander's been better than Scherzer this year. But that's about $87 million a year you have locked up in those two players. And Defo, you know as well as anybody, New York is the greatest place in the world to win, and it's the worst place in the world to not win. and everything swirling around that team, and talk of a new president of baseball operations coming in after the season, and Buck Showalter's job security being very much in the air. Steve Cohen has been remarkably patient to this point, to his credit, but that one's really hard to explain. I said at the start of the year, the Mets, to me, even though you can look at certain things and say, well, maybe they're a little bit old in the tooth in the rotation, to me, it seemed like they were in that too big to fail category. Yeah. I just thought there was no way they would be where they are right now, and I would imagine most around the game thought the same thing. But at this point, I think it's too far gone to think there's any chance. You just haven't seen any signs. With the Padres, to me, there have been some signs that you can point to and say this team has a shot to make a run over the last 60 games. You just haven't seen it at any point this year with the Mets.
Cursed, from the start. You had to think.
Edwin Diaz. Going back
Diaz
to the
World Baseball Classic. That was a killer. I was afraid to call my friend Ira the Met fan for like months. After that, I knew he would be face down in the streets of Merrick, New York, thinking that his season was ruined. And then I thought Bowie Kuhn was going to rise from the grave and negate the Carlos Correa deal because, fortunately for the Mets, they didn't acquire him also, or they'd really be up against it in terms of what they're getting back for their money. But it is kind of a mystery, and I'm thinking Buck Showalter probably toast after this year, which that seems to be every club's solution for what ails them is to we got to get Buck. He's a baseball guy, and I haven't seen him really distinguish himself to that level. Lubie, you have another one for Glenn?
Before we go, since we're in New York, what's funny is the Yankees are 6 games over 500, so the year isn't as dreadful as they're standing in where they are in the standings, but they are last in their division for the first time in like 30 years. Brian Cashman and Aaron Boone are still there, even though most Yankee fans don't know why. You talk about Showalter probably being time. Is it time for those guys to go? And do you see any way that either of those guys come back next year for the Yankees?
It's funny, you mentioned they're 6 games over, and they're in the hunt for a playoff spot, but it doesn't feel like it, does it?
No.
Losing Judge was devastating for them, and not having Rodon for the first half of the season certainly was a huge blow for them. Stanton is finally getting going over the last couple of weeks for just about the first time all year. I would imagine, I look at the Yankees and say we've been really close to writing them off a lot over the last decade or so. And yet they always find a way. They always sneak in there. And maybe the ceiling's not what it once was, where people externally expect them to win the World Series every single year the way they do internally. And they go out in the division series and the wild card round more years than not lately. But it does seem as though Aaron Boone's time may be running out in New York. I'm not sure about Cashman. He's been there a long time, since 1998, his first year, through a lot of ups, not very many downs. I thought the Sean Casey hire at the All-Star break was interesting, bringing a guy who'd never been a coach in to be the major league hitting coach. And you know what? They've gotten some results all of a sudden. And I saw some video of, a couple of their hitters adjusting their stances a little bit, Stanton being one of them, and now taking off a little bit in the second half. Maybe Sean Casey is the magic elixir for the Yankees. But it seems hard for me to believe that both those guys would survive if they don't get to the playoffs at least, and maybe even do some damage in the playoffs. Because you look at the American League this year, and there's no Braves in the American League. The Orioles have been great, but they haven't done it in October before. We'll see, can the Blue Jays make a run? Can the Rays get back on track? Nobody in the Central scares you. The Rangers are in the mix for the first time in a while. They could be dangerous. The Astros are lurking. But there's really not a runaway favorite in the American League. So if the Yankees get hot down the stretch, they still have a chance to make some noise.
That's funny too. One last thing, just curious your opinion on this, because my man Phil Mushnick in the Post naturally is raging about and constantly complaining about these managerial moves with the cookie cutter business, about some guy's going to pitch the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, whatever, a designated inning. He gave an example of a guy came in the 8th inning, got the side out on 4 pitches, 1, 2, 3, 4 pitches. And they lifted him, of course, for the closer, the designated closer, even though this guy's on fire. I mean, he's got great stuff. And, of course, they end up losing the ball game. And you see this constantly with managers. What's your feeling about that? I mean, is there too much according to formula and not enough according to instinct? Or is this something that you have to do to sustain your pitching staff across the 162?
I would say yes. I think it's a little bit of all those things.
Oh,
There
yeah?
is too
Okay.
much. There is too much that's scripted, in my opinion. I think a lot of people,
Boone
from
is
our
the worst at it,
generation,
though.
might agree.
Boone is the greatest example of a guy that it doesn't matter. A guy could, throw 3 pitches, get the side out. He's going to be lifted because it's automatic.
And then the other side of that is then it's easy to go into the post game press conference after you lose the game and say, look, he's our 9th inning guy. He's been our 9th inning guy all
Yeah.
year. He's been successful 32 out of 34 times. It didn't work out today, but it's easy to fall back on that. This is our 8th inning guy. People like to know the roles that they're in. They like to know when they need to be ready, like to know when they should be looking ahead in inning to see who's coming up to be prepared in the bullpen. But the other side of that, as you point out, is there are some older school guys. Look at the success Bruce Bochy is having in Texas this year. Look at what Dusty Baker has done coming back in Houston. You're talking about Buck, but Buck won 101 games with the Mets last year with not quite the roster he has this year. And there is still a place in the game. Terry Francona is one of these guys who I work with in Boston. There is still a place in the game for managers who at times can say, you know what? Looking at the book, it just doesn't feel right. My gut tells me something else. Now, it's harder to explain post-game when your gut wound up being wrong. But, that comes to another point that I make all the time. You might make the right decision for all the right reasons, but it doesn't work out. It doesn't make it the wrong decision necessarily. At some point, the pitchers have to pitch. They got to get people out. The hitters have to hit. They got to get runners over, got to get them in. It can't always all be on the manager. But going back to your original question, yeah, I do think too much of this is scripted. It's taken away from a lot of the fun of the game. And there are a lot of people who played this game a long time ago who watch the game today and just have a hard time enjoying the game today because of the way everything is so scripted, dictated by the front office at 4:30 in the afternoon instead of by a veteran baseball person who's been around forever making those calls at 9:30 at night.
I'm having a little trouble enjoying the game after that guy Hicks for the Cardinals came in and threw the ball into right field, allowing 2 runs to score when I needed the Cardinals to win one game in that series to complete my 3-team parlay in Atlantic City. How the fuck did that guy throw the ball into right field? I'll still never figure it
He's
out. That was a
human.
Little League play.
It happens. Yeah.
Unbelievable. He's
Yeah.
2 feet from the first baseman. Lubie could have made the toss.
Yeah.
Glenn, we love you, man. Congratulations on all the things that you're doing. Sarney says this is top-notch stuff that Bill James, would be absolutely beaming to see what you're producing on the written side of things. And we're looking forward to
you.
seeing you back in Major League Baseball, soon. And, we'll have to sign up for the satellite, whatever city that you're broadcasting in, because did a dynamite job, and it just ain't the same. It just ain't the same without you, my friend. So glad you could join us here on the show. It's always a pleasure. Thanks so much.
I appreciate the kind words, guys. Always fun to talk with you. We'll do it again soon.
Yeah,
All right, Glenn Geffner, ladies and gentlemen. Wow, I mean, a treasure chest on baseball knowledge here. Kind of like Jim Larinaga with the basketball, huh? That was good. I got reinvigorated with my enthusiasm for baseball. I'm going to get over this Hicks thing eventually. No?
They've already played the Cardinals and lost to the Cardinals since then.
You subterranean piece of... No, I don't want to say what I was screaming in the sports book there in Atlantic City, but it is great. I mean, it definitely tends to spark and ignite your emotions if you have a couple of bucks riding on a game. That was 6-1, though, to complete that thing. I'm up. Walker hits a miracle home run, Lubie. Did I show you my losing tickets? Here they are. Look at that. I left out the 3. I don't want to cry about that. We're going to duck out a couple of minutes early. I have to take care of the Mustang's out of town, and I did nothing last night.
Nice.
Went up to Hutchinson Island. Have you been there? Hutchinson Island, somewhere north of the Palm Beaches there.
Okay.
Like Jensen Beach. Very serene. She sent me a text, we could live here.
Yeah,
and
sure
I thought, I could blow my brains out too.
Yes, you can live there. They always do that. Shirley's like, what about here? And I'm like, for who?
What am I going to do? We're going to drive down to Tropical Acres for the noon session of Mike Mayo's Lunchbox from Jensen Beach. It would be worth it. That's the thing. So we'll have that coming up at 12 o'clock today, and that's going to be a lot of fun. Did we see? I can't anticipate the prime rib there, but I'm dying to try it. Aren't you, Lubie?
I want prime rib and I want the lobsters.
Pictures, I mean, are just so good.
I haven't had the prime rib yet, so I would like prime rib and the lobsters. That's my hope. We'll see what Mayo arranges.
I don't know the last time I ordered prime rib in a restaurant. It had to be a long, long time ago.
I never have.
Oh.
And I know they're famous for it, so I hope that's one of our dishes.
It looks great, huh? But see, they may not, the way they like slow roast that kind of stuff or whatever.
I don't know.
Yeah, you don't necessarily have it ready at like 12 o'clock, even if you have like, Mayo coming in. Although he could eat the whole prime rib. How many portions do you think they get off one?
I don't know.
All right, and cut 2, Mike? Yeah, okay. I'll take that. Now you could give it to Dixie, who, the only guy that was ever dissatisfied with a meal there was, of course, Mayo's buddy, Steve Dickstein there from the Best of Del Rey. They have everybody in their employees. Joe Casale working for him, too.
I don't know.
Bonnie's doing stuff. I mean, it's incredible, man. An expanding enterprise. It's great. Nice. We need to get the sports job there. All right. We'll see you guys 12 o'clock today from Tropical Acres Restaurant. We'll join you again tomorrow. Here, a little old school with Tony Segreto going to take place. Thursday, we have the Hialeah Park Trivia Challenge. Friday, a Degenerate Friday. So still a lot to go this week on the Defo Show. Our thanks to Glenn Geffner. It's always a pleasure. We get a little perspective on Major League Baseball from this guy. And it'll be interesting. I mean, I hope the Marlins stay in the chase at least so that we can follow this from a perspective that is a little more, what you would say, festive than just saying, oh, God, they suck. I mean, that gets old. That really does.
I'd love to see them hang around, and I don't think they can do it without making some kind of moves.
I want it to be a very exciting September. That would be terrific.
Be wonderful.
All right. We'll see you guys later on, 12 o'clock today here on South Florida Live and the Let's Eat South Florida Facebook page. And you can join us for that from Tropical Acres. And until then, we'll see you later as we leave you know that.
The time.
It's 8:59.
Let's go to eat a damn snack.
Look what they done to my soul.